The main character's name is Charlotte, and he is an honest man. Not so long ago, he activated a certain system. The person he has locked up will ignite the deepest feeling in his heart: anxiety. At first, he refused. People ran in panic and shouted that the information was unreliable. The war is in full swing. They tried to escape, and escape one by one. People realized that they were being used as bait. Charlotte ended up in this very cue ball. A blonde girl throws a man to the ground and asks if this is really human strength, which is called courage. She smiles and is delighted to say that he is not as good as her king. The blonde girl's name is Charlotte and tells him to run. The war is gaining momentum, so he doesn't have to worry about it. The young man is an F-rank brave man, and he doesn't need to be a hero. The young man replies that he is here to ensure the safety of the city. There's no way he can escape at such an important moment. He tells the girl not to worry, because he can handle the enemy. At that moment, the girl was stretching and talking about how people were so weak and she was very bored. Charlotte says that this is a battle, and the young man will never run away. The girl screamed and said that the young man was bleeding from his nose. She shouts at him and says he's just standing there watching. His body can't even resist, let alone fight. She ordered him to run and not guard her. Suddenly, some monsters turn to a blonde girl, calling her a princess, and say that there is another person standing there. They rush towards Charlotte. The girl orders her subordinates to kill him. The girl almost approached Charlotte and said that they could make a wine glass for their beloved king out of the young man's head. The system window announces to Charlotte that he is logging in under the name "I Love Bad Guys." The girl walks towards the young man, and a purple aura forms around her body. The system announces that the entrance is closed. She has already reached the young man's body and is preparing to strike. The system announces that it has been activated. The girl grabs Charlotte's head with her hand, who looks at her very warily. The girl brings her mouth closer to Charlotte's face, showing her fangs. Charlotte sees her sharp teeth. The system announces that the kiss has been completed, and the young man has received plus 100 attack points. Charlotte understands that this system can continuously improve his effectiveness in combat. Charlotte's friend screamed and asked Charlotte what he was doing. The girl's subordinate stopped and asked the princess in shock about what she was doing. Charlotte looked carefully to the side. With one swing of his sword, he defeated several opponents. The girl was very surprised. Suddenly, she abruptly bounced off the youth's body. Charlotte wiped the drool from his mouth as if nothing had happened. His girlfriend was looking at him with a red face. The princess wiped her lips and thought only about what was happening to her. She didn't understand if she was going to kill him. She doesn't understand why she kissed the young man. The girl thought that the young man was a ghost. Charlotte pointed his finger and said that for the sake of the safety of the residents of the city, he will do everything in his power, even if he dies. The princess's subordinates started talking about that their princess kissed a man. The young man shouted that he would fight until his last breath. The subordinates said that a little earlier he had heard that the princess had found the baby on the street. Suddenly, another subordinate said that how dare they doubt the princess's feelings for the king. They are warriors. Only good people can become fighters. The princess thought that the king should not know about this kiss. It was very strange that her heart was beating so fast. Her anxiety increased by 15%. The girl ordered her subordinates to kill Charlotte. The young man got into a fighting stance. One of the monsters appeared next to the young man. Charlotte swung his sword. Charlotte fought off the attack. Charlotte was surprised that one blow broke his sword. The young man noticed a new opponent. Charlotte dodged. He realized that his defense hadn't increased, but his attack level was now about 100 points. He smashed the enemy's cannon. Suddenly, there was another enemy behind him. The young man began to shuffle his feet. He swung his sword. With the attack, the young man pushed the opponent away. The hero's girlfriend was surprised that Charlotte threw the fighter in the air. This is not a power that level F can possess. The young man thought that he should have cut the enemy in half. However, he just scratched his torso. Suddenly, he felt something right above him. The princess was preparing to attack the youth with her foot. Charlotte put his hands up to protect himself. There was a huge explosion. The hero's girlfriend covered her body so that she wouldn't get swollen. The opponents were surprised to see this attack. They screamed and said that the princess had knocked down the warrior. The girl's subordinate ran at them, telling them to let the man die. Charlotte realized that things were going badly. Suddenly, the princess wagged her tail. She pushed her subordinate into the distance. The subordinate fell not far from them. The subordinates did not understand what the princess was doing. The girl ordered everyone to listen to her. She said that no one is allowed to do that. She ordered that anyone who disobeyed her be killed. She blushed and thought about how she personally wanted to train this man. The girl's anxiety increased by 91%. The monsters rejoiced and shouted at the princess to kill this man. The girl grabbed Charlotte's head and dreamed of his death. Charlotte noticed something from the side. Suddenly, his ear took on a pointed shape. After that, it took on a human form, and the system notified that the protection had increased by 50 points. Charlotte wondered if that was the price of his strength. He wants to experience everything honestly, namely remorse for his character. However, he became embarrassed and thought about the safety of people in the city, although this could be considered an insult. At that moment, the princess was thinking about how she had become so strange. She took the initiative to do this to a human. The girl did not understand why this was so. Nas is the most powerful in Warcraft, and it's obvious. However, her body no longer listens to her. She looked at the confused Charlotte. The young man added 120 points to agility. The subordinates said that the princess wants to kill a man, but they feel very strange. Suddenly, someone said that it was very brazen and told them to watch the princess look for a breakthrough in the young man. He told his friend to keep quiet if he didn't understand. The youth's defense increased by 130 points, and his attack increased by 150 points. Charlotte realized that now his points should be enough to deal with this group of fighters. He was about to attack, but his subordinates warned the princess. The girl wrapped her tail around the young man's arm. She grabbed Charlotte by the neck. The young man realized that this was not enough. The girl drove the young man into the wall. The subordinates rejoiced and urged the princess to kill the young man. The girl thought she was feeling so good right now, but she had to hold back. She told Charlotte that little people dare to fight against Warcraft. She decides to undress Charlotte. The girl touches his armor. She says that people should see the gap between humans and the animals of Warcraft. The girl tears the young man's armor. The girl wanted to look at the young man's muscles. The subordinates rejoiced and urged the princess to punish the opponent. Charlotte realized that his armor had been destroyed. He noticed the girl holding out her hand. He said he couldn't stand it and couldn't get any closer. The girl thinks that something is rising from the depths of her heart, but she can restrain herself. Charlotte gets plus 100 points to defend. The girl approaches the boy. Charlotte understands that it's hard for him. The girl falls on the hero. He realizes that his current strength is not enough to defeat his enemies. The young man's girlfriend was confused and assured herself that her friend was fighting. Charlotte was thinking that he could sacrifice himself for the safety of the city. He stretches out his arms to hug the princess and thinks that he needs to increase the value of his power. While the subordinates were watching their princess, Charlotte was raising the level of his stats. An armored warrior appeared nearby. The sword fell out of his hands, and he called the princess. The girl looked away, embarrassed. Everyone looked towards the armored monster. The system detected that the king had received a critical hit. The king asked the princess what she was doing. Charlotte gets a doubling of all bonuses. The king screamed that he would kill the princess. The girl said that this was not what the king thought, and she could explain everything. At that moment, the young man was thinking that he did not know that his level would rise in this way. The king was shouting furiously and preparing to attack. He rushed towards the princess and Charlotte. He shouted at the young man to leave his beloved concubine alone and stay away from her. The king attacked the young man. Charlotte landed next to her friend. The girl asked him if he was okay. The young man said he could still hold out. Charlotte thought that the monster was instantly in front of him. His attack power is also high. The demon King Barrett said that didn't the girl say that it wouldn't happen again? The princess just remained silent. The man asked if she remembered what she had said to him. She asked to be allowed to take her next time. He doesn't understand why she's doing this. The girl shouted that the king was the reason, and it was all because of him. He came in very late, and the girl asked what he was doing. The man was surprised. The subordinates were also surprised. The girl thought it was because the king came too late, and she almost made the same mistake. He did the wrong thing, and still has the nerve to ask questions. She asked him again what he was doing that took him so long to get there. The king asked the princesses not to be angry, and he was wrong. He saw a lot of people running away, so he went to deal with them. He promised that this would not happen again. The subordinates said that the king is very attached to the princess and bows his head to her. Charlotte thought about how he would quietly slip away while they weren't paying attention to him. The difference in levels is great. Charlotte helped her friend out and asked if she could go. She said that her leg was just injured. The girl said it was because he was late and forced her to get Charlotte's attention. The king asked the girl to calm down. He turned around and said that he would kill him, and then his concubine would not be sad. The girl swore that she would never fall in love with another man. The king ordered his subordinates to capture the fugitives. The subordinate advised the words of the princess, who asked not to interfere. The king screamed and rushed towards the young man. Charlotte felt something behind his back. He said the king had come. The king stood in front of the young man and asked how he dared to attract the attention of his beloved concubine. He attacked the young man. Charlotte screamed in pain. He landed not far from the princess. Charlotte realized that his ribs were broken, and he couldn't defend himself because the king's speed was too fast. The king rushes towards the young man. He's gonna tear him apart. His eyes are filled with rage. Charlotte screams that his system is blocked. Suddenly, the princess's hand appeared. She hit the king and ordered him not to harm Charlotte. The king was surprised. Charlotte leaned on the ground. He ran to the side. The king began to cry and asked the princess why she had hit him. Charlotte has increased her stats. He thought about the battle with the king and thought they needed to talk at a safe distance. The princess said that she really wants this human body and can't do anything about it. The king asked what she was talking about, because she had just said that she loved him more than anyone in the world. He asked her not to leave. The girl threw away the king's hand. She rushed towards the young man. The girl jumped to Charlotte and wanted to be released. She fell on the young man. Charlotte gained points of vitality and concentration while the king was watching everything. Charlotte thought that right now, he could only let the girl control him. The king said it was because he wasn't good enough and everyone was using him. He realized his guilt and said he was going to kill the young man, so he asked her to return to normal. The princess shouted at the king to get out and not disturb them. The king was horrified. She screamed and lost consciousness. Charlotte's level has increased by 5. Charlotte's friend rushed to the princess and asked her to let the young man go. She started walking towards the princess. Charlotte called out her name and told her not to attack the girl. The princess activated her tail. She grabbed Bella. The princess pressed Bella against the wall, and she approached Charlotte. She didn't understand why she was like this, because she didn't feel like the person she used to be. The girl was very happy. Suddenly, the king said that the girl had lied to him and deceived him. He screamed and said he wasn't ready to date. The king rushed to the girl and the boy. The king threatened and said he would kill the princess. She turned in fright towards the king. A stream of air shot at the girl. The king's sword ordered him to stop in front of the princess's face. The girl turned away. The king shouted that he still loved her. The king was stunned. He dropped the sword from his hands. The demon king Barrett lost consciousness again and self-destructed. Charlotte got a level. The princess asked Beretta what he was up to. The subordinates shouted that they were not to blame and rushed to escape. The king began to gain energy. Charlotte's level has increased to 10 and he has unlocked the skill. The young man lunged with a bright sword. He cut the king's neck. The body turns into a shadow, teleporting in a circle within a radius of 5 meters from the enemy, delivering a slashing attack. The king fainted right under the girl's feet. Charlotte realized that if he continued to level up, he would gain more skills. The princess said that the king hadn't done that in the past. The second time, he should have been calmer, but for some reason he fainted. Suddenly, the king rushed straight at the girl. The princess screamed. She loosened her grip and released Bella. The king asked the princess to keep her promise and die with him. The girl started to refuse. The system window notified that Baccarat was about to die. The princess started crying and asked the king to let her go. Charlotte stabbed the king's arm with his sword. The princess was freed from the king's hands. Suddenly, she was pulled to the side. The king pulled his hand towards the princess. There was a huge explosion. Bella, Charlotte, and the princess flew to the side. The girl's body began to disappear and glow with purple light. They fell from another floor. Charlotte wondered if he had fallen to the bottom of the dungeon. Suddenly, he discovered some kind of creature on his body. The system window said that this animal's name is Yu Gay, and it is a Ling Lang lizard. The lizard crawled away. Bella started to come to her senses and called Charlotte. The demon king Barrett is dead. The young man received a reward, a map of the underground city of night. He didn't know whether to accept this card or not, and he needed to think carefully. The girl saw Charlotte under her. She jumped away from him and apologized. Charlotte called up the system window. He decides to open the card. He saw the path, the trap, the resources, and realized that all the rooms were disabled. He realized that he could go to the boss's room without worrying about getting lost. Bella asked the young man what he was talking about and what he had seen. Charlotte said it was nothing out of the ordinary. He realized that he was the only one who saw the system. He encouraged Bella to go on the road, and she agreed. Suddenly, a purple organ throbbed. Charlotte was surprised. He started vomiting purple liquid. Bella was surprised. Charlotte saw that his little finger had started to glow. The young man screamed, raising his hand up. His finger began to dissolve. The young man began to spin from side to side. Suddenly, cuts began to appear all over his body. The young man was screaming. Bella hugged him. Charlotte thought that his back was bleeding and he couldn't rub against the ground. His whole body is so hot, like it's on fire. Suddenly, his finger went dead. There was almost nothing left of the little finger. Charlotte relaxed. It was helplessly in Bella's arms. The young man said that the pain was over. He said he was fine and started to get up from his seat. Bella asked the young man what was happening to his body and why it was melting. The young man said he was poisoned. There was no life in his eyes. Warcraft attacked this city about 6 months ago. The young man saw several monsters fighting a hero from the guild. They grabbed the box that the hero was holding in his hands. The monsters weren't exactly ordinary. The monster injured the young man with this box when he hit the hero. After the impact, the box exploded. Charlotte was thrown to the side. He was shocked by the battles of heroes and monsters in the ruins. The young man lay under a pile of rocks for several minutes. Something was leaking out of the box that the hero was holding. Suddenly, blood poured from the sky. Charlotte smelled a pungent odor, as if he was about to throw up. Monsters roamed around him. Suddenly, the rain started falling on the hero. He threw the box away and screamed in pain. The monsters also screamed in pain. Charlotte was in a pile of rocks, so the rain of blood did not fall on him. His back was in a lot of pain, but everyone else seemed to melt. However, he was poisoned by the smell. When he woke up, he was already in the hospital. The doctor said he had at most a year to live. However, the blood of the demon god was the antidote. The young man was surprised when he saw the system window. The window invited the young man to register in the system and become a player. He will receive tips on how to get shelter for the demon god. The young man made his choice, and the prompt informed him that the blood of the demon god was in the underground city of Nai. Later, he found out what poisoning was. Right in this underground city, he called Bella to go and said that there was a room with clothes and a gun, so they should go there first. They set off. At that moment, some warriors came to the dark hall. The warrior with the shield walked in front of everyone. Suddenly, he felt something. A white ray shot straight into the human formation. The warrior's shield fell apart. Someone shouted for everyone to disperse, because there is a chance. The beam pierced the body of the first warrior, and he began to fall. Crusade team, Vice Captain Tier, rank B, ordered everyone not to move. 250. If someone moves, it will activate other mechanisms. Everyone was scared. The men said that even Claude, who has the strongest armor of them all, was shot in the head. They didn't know how to get through, but no one else wanted to go. They had finally reached their destination. However, people also said that they would not be able to return. Captain Sirius of rank A from the punishment team said that this rule has the lowest rank. Suddenly, someone pushed out a soldier named Ma Kui, who was ranked D. Captain Sirius ordered him to come over and find the right way. The man was terrified. He held out his sword and said that a man should know the consequences of disobeying orders. The man was terrified. Suddenly, Captain Sirius is distracted by someone. The man says he made an arrow that can fly both backwards and forwards. Let her explore the path first. Discover at least one mechanism, and then increase their survival rate. The man cut this arrow. Makui stared at the arrow fragments in horror. Sirius then turned to the young man with the arrow and told him to take another look at the notes he had made, and then threatened to kill him. The man silently walked away. Sirius ordered Makui to get up and explore the path. The man got up with shaking legs. Makui started to move, but Sirius urged him on and ordered him to move faster. The man began to walk slowly. He took a step and stepped on the tile. He realized that he had missed the mechanism, and it was very good, but something was wrong. He didn't know which tile to step onto next. Sirius was telling him not to waste time and to go faster. Makui's leg was shaking. He squeezed his eyes shut in fear. Then, he took a step forward. Makui let out a sigh of relief. Sirius, who was standing behind him, said that it was very good. He then ordered the man to continue. Makui understood that he could die. He thought in a panic that he was going to die for sure. His mind swam. He realizes that he can no longer go on. The next moment, his legs began to unfold. He ran back screaming that he did not want to die and wanted to return home. The man was running towards Sirius. The next moment, a yellow ray pierced the man's head. Some warriors shouted that this time the attack was from below. It may be that the arrangement of the mechanisms is always different. Moreover, the attack appears suddenly every time. There's no way to predict where it will come from. Mouse Kui collapsed on the floor right in front of Captain Sirius. Sirius then turned around and began to choose the lowest rank of the remaining warriors. He found a new victim and told him to move out. Suddenly, there was a noise from far away in the corridor. Someone told Captain Sirius that the door was open. Charlotte appeared in the doorway. Charlotte asked Bella about how people got here. Someone shouted to the captain that this was a decoy team. Sirius thought that all the bait should be killed. This guy didn't obey his orders, but he didn't understand how they came. Suddenly, a team member called Bella and said she was fine. Sirius called the man a fool and asked why they were still alive. Charlotte looked away in surprise. The day before his departure, a blade was pointed at Charlotte, and he was ordered to speak. The man asked how Charlotte knew the color of the captain's wife's underwear. Charlotte replied that he was training his intuition for the next battle. It allows him to guess the colors of objects around him. Sirius called the young man names and ordered him to tell him how the young man's relationship with his wife was. Otherwise, he would kill him right here and now. Colleagues asked the captain to calm down because it is illegal to kill people in the city. Charlotte shouted that he would never allow a man to slander him and compromise his integrity. He's going to show him the results of his training now. He said that one guy had no underwear, Sirius had pink underwear, and the other two guys had paired underwear. The man turned to the captain and said that he agreed to kill Charlotte right here and now. In an arc, the man said that Charlotte had guessed wrong. You can't kill him in the city. If someone finds the body, there will be trouble. Sirius asked about the ideas. The man advised Charlotte to send a bait team. He won't have to be killed. Charlotte went around changing his gear. He did not understand how they could have met this team, and whether it could be that they were lost. Sirius turned to Charlotte and told him to go to him. As a captain, he orders him to obey. Charlotte realized that Sirius wanted low-ranking team members to explore the path. The blonde man told Charlotte not to move. He turned to the captain and said that since Charlotte and Bella were able to get there alive, they just needed to explore their route and bypass the trap. Team members should not be risked. Sirius said that they had spent dozens of valuable battle team members to destroy the C-rank dungeon boss. They don't have time to retreat. Sirius said he was doing it for the team. If a man doesn't like it, then he can go by himself. The man said nothing. Sirius said that the young man didn't train his instincts. It's time to contribute to the team. He must remember the consequences of disobeying orders. Charlotte opens the map of the room. Bella told Charlotte not to go, because there was something wrong with this road. She asked him to find another way or path. Charlotte said that the captain had already given the order, so he had to go. He asked her not to worry, because he would be fine. The warriors were shocked when Charlotte made the first move without hesitation. The men were surprised, because Charlotte has an F rank. They asked themselves if he really relied on intuition. The system told the young man to go forward by 3 squares, and then to the left by 2 squares. The young man followed the instructions. The men were surprised, because the young man was very lucky. He still had a few steps left. Charlotte turned left and was about to take steps across 2 cages. The men were surprised, because Charlotte was able to. One more step and he would reach his goal. Then Charlotte steps on the cage. The mechanism does not work. The men saw the young man walking without hesitation. They thought he knew the right way. They didn't understand how information about the terrain of the first half of the dungeon would be worth the lives of a dozen scouts. He, an F-rank warrior, has no right to mess with them. Then the young man jumped. He had reached the end. It all depends on luck. Charlotte realized that he had almost lost his balance. Sirius wondered why the mechanism hadn't worked. Charlotte was going to go 5 squares ahead. The men were surprised that the young man kept walking. Finally, Charlotte passed by the body of the dead warrior. He came straight to Sirius and smiled. The men were surprised that Charlotte was unharmed, and the mechanism had never worked. They did not believe that he relied on intuition to bypass all the mechanisms. Charlotte said that this was the result of his training. It wasn't his or Jinkin's fault. Sirius placed his blade on Charlotte's shoulder. He thought about what kind of intuition it could be. This is nothing but luck. Sooner or later, it will end. He told Charlotte that he would go ahead. Finally, the group moved forward and reached the end of the traps. Charlotte saw a Warcraft blue mushroom on the ground. After eating it, physical strength is added and pain is relieved. One of the side effects of this mushroom is stools. Charlotte thought that the princess was probably hungry, so he decided to pick some mushrooms for her. Charlotte picks out the mushrooms. He says that these mushrooms smell very good, but he thinks to himself that it's a pity that people can't eat them, although he thought that nothing terrible would happen if he licked it a little. Suddenly, Sirius comes up to Charlotte and asks him what he is holding in his hand. Charlotte says she found a mushroom. Sirius snatches the mushroom out of his hands. Sirius laughs because he took the food away from Charlotte. He said that after they invaded the dungeon, all the resources belonged to the guild and his squad. He told Charlotte not to mess around, but to go and follow orders. Charlotte agrees and says that he will unquestioningly follow the orders of the commander. That is, always go ahead of the team and never stand behind the commander. Sirius agreed. At that moment, the man apologized to Bella and said that he did not know that she was being held hostage. He hopes that the girl is able to speak here. He is the deputy captain of the squad, so he can allow her to leave for another squad. The girl said she came voluntarily. The man shouted and asked why she did that. Bella looked at Charlotte, who was explaining to Sirius that the gates lead to the main boss, and there are dead ends all around. The girl with the blue hair informed Bella that she had bandaged her fracture. The girl thanked her. The man turned to Bella, and she looked at him. He said that if a girl is just trying to protect a Class F guy, then it's better to go to the scout squad, otherwise she might die. The scout squad consists of people of lower rank. They are decoys. As long as they're alive, you can spend the guild's resources, and the only way to get resources is to become bait. He told the girl not to be stupid. He is a B-rank warrior and will be able to protect her, so the girl should not leave his side. Charlotte said there were no traps outside the door, so they could go. Sirius ordered Charlotte to go first and open the gate. Charlotte pushes the gate open. Sirius tells the squad to be ready. Sirius realizes that he has a stomachache. Charlotte continues to open the doors. He opened the door. Sirius is giving orders for everyone to take precautions. Sirius thinks his stomach hurts. The team member doesn't understand what it smells like. Charlotte starts walking forward. He goes to the boss's room first. Sirius asks Charlotte about what's inside and thinks his stomach hurts a lot. The man realizes that his stomach hurts because of the mushroom. Charlotte turns around and says there are traps everywhere. He starts running forward. The young man invites people to come with him, but Sirius tries to stop him. Everyone starts running, but they don't understand why they're running like that. Suddenly, Sirius feels something. He thinks he can't take it anymore. Suddenly, the squad feels a terrible smell. They don't understand why he's so familiar. Sirius shouts at them to stop talking. Charlotte runs to the wall. Sirius is calling him. Sirius asks Charlotte about the side effects of the mushroom. The young man is surprised. Sirius says it's nothing like that. A member of the squad calls the commander and says that he is probably tired. Sirius refuses and pushes a team member. He threatens Charlotte not to run. The young man says in surprise that he understood him. After a while, the team discovers a strange tile on the ground. Charlotte warns them not to step on her. At this moment, a monster is dozing next to them. Charlotte shows the way. They pass by a huge snake and a spider. Then Charlotte realizes that this is the last test. Sirius thinks that no trap has ever worked and this has never happened. Sirius realizes that it's all because of Charlotte. The young man says they'll be at the bosses soon. Sirius prepares his sword and thinks that he has reached the boss without a rank, but it will all be over soon. Suddenly, he sees a piece of stone above Charlotte. Sirius activates his sword. He swings straight at the stone. He cuts through the stone above Charlotte. The young man notices a stone right above him. Sirius thinks that all the courage of an F-rank fighter will be lost due to the traps of this dungeon, which is quite logical. Charlotte tries to dodge. Someone's skill is activated. Sirius is surprised. Someone's tail pushes the commander away. A monster appears. A rock slide begins. Charlotte warns the team about this. Stones are falling behind the young man. Sirius thought that he reacted quickly and covered himself with a sword. Or he could have died. Charlotte says it's over and he's trapped. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him. A silhouette steps out of the shadows. Charlotte turns in his direction. A demon girl appears and expresses her displeasure. At this moment, the warriors were standing in front of the monster. This monster was called the Scorpion Puppet. He had a B+ rank. The deputy commander ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Bella, who was given the sword by the deputy, thought that it was heavy. Meanwhile, the man ordered everyone to take out their shields and defend themselves. Don't let the monster move and block its attacks. In the next moment, many shields pierced into the ground. The men with shields said they had obeyed the order. The deputy ordered that the shooters should run away and stand behind him. He ordered them to take out bows and arrows, aim and attack. The archers prepared to attack. In the next moment, a rain of arrows rained down on the monster. The monster didn't defend against the arrows in any way. The commander shouted that they were continuing the attack. The monster screamed. The monster prepared to attack and summoned an air current. The warriors with shields were trying to defend themselves from the strong wind of this monster. One of them told the others to stop. The deputy commander was trying to protect himself from the wind with his sword. The man thought that he had deflected all the arrows with his powerful boss energy alone. Looking at the monster, it became clear that the attack did not cause any damage. At that moment, Sirius screamed and asked the warriors why they were standing rooted to the spot. He ordered them not to be afraid of the aura of some Warcraft boss. They can, because he doesn't doubt them. There's absolutely no one to be afraid of, just one Warcraft boss. At that time, Charlotte heard some noise. He wondered what that sound was now, and whether it could be a Warcraft boss. Suddenly, something flashed out of the darkness. The long tail aimed straight at Charlotte. Charlotte was surprised that it could be the boss's tail. The next moment, a huge monster charged straight at the young man. It was fierce and had its claws ready. The monster attacked with its claws right where Charlotte was standing. The young man dodged deftly. He put his feet on the ground. The young man turned around and saw how the monster was already preparing to attack him again. At that moment, Charlotte was raising his fist. He told the monster to get 3,190 levels from his fist. The young man punched the monster in the belly with his attack. Charlotte realized that his attack had been successful. The fragments of the monster slowly fell to the ground. His tail also broke away from his body. Suddenly, a voice could be heard from the darkness, that the youth had just broken one of the scorpion puppets with a single blow. Charlotte thought that the antidote that could cure him of the poison was inside the boss. He can't waste his time on some useless fights against the likes of this monster anymore. Anyway, he has a card. He can just get out of here as soon as possible and leave him alone. A Warcraft boss named Shatil appeared, who had an A+ rank. The girl said that now it's not so important. She was going to throw away all those things that were touched by people anyway. She originally wanted to rip the youth's head to shreds with this puppet, but it seems that now she will have to do it manually. Charlotte realized that the boss of Warcraft is a girl. He told her that she would not be able to harm him so easily. The girl laughed and asked if the young man was serious. She says she wasn't going to lay a finger on his body. Then the girl smiled and summoned the blue threads. The girl thought she was attacking the young man without touching him even once. At that moment, the monster attacked one of the warriors. The girl said that she would have to deal with the young man first, and then with those people outside. Charlotte screamed and said that he was a brave knight. Protecting other people is his responsibility, so he will stay here and fight to the end. Even if he has to use up all his remaining energy, he will end the girl once and for all. The system window informed that the system is activated. Suddenly, the boss appeared in front of the young man, who was already trying to attack him with her foot. She grabbed Charlotte's neck with her foot. Suddenly, the young man began to fly away. The girl pinned the young man right to the ground. The system notified that the young man was paralyzed. The girl snorted and said that this was another boy who had greatly overestimated his abilities. The system has notified that the percentage of calmness is equal to 16. At that moment, the monster broke someone's sword. The deputy captain was delighted and told everyone to look in that direction. The Warcraft boss's head has turned red and it looks like their punches are working. Charlotte thought the girl was very fast. The girl said that the fact that people are able to walk is impressive. It's not bad for an ordinary person, but that's it. Lord Neely hates it when people enter his cave. She began to press on the young man with her foot. Charlotte realizes that this Warcraft boss is too powerful, he can't get off that easily. However, he is going to stop the girl at any cost. Then the young man licked the girl's leg. She was embarrassed and shouted that it was disgusting. The young man seriously did this to her leg. The young man increased his agility by 220 points. At that moment, the puppet attacked another knight and pinned him to the ground with its tail. Suddenly, the puppet blushed with embarrassment. Bella thought it had been so long and they hadn't gotten anywhere. Then she remembered that Charlotte had been overwhelmed by rocks and needed to be rescued as soon as possible. She called out to a man named T. She asked him to cover for her, and she would help Charlotte get out of the rubble. The girl rushed straight forward with lightning speed. Tyr asked her to stop and not leave. The girl was approaching the rubble. She thought that she was already going to help him and everything would be fine. Suddenly, the monster prepared to attack Bella. He was already swinging his pincers. The next moment, someone's blade made a cut. Tyr covered Bella and stopped the monster's claw. The monster's attack was so strong that Tyr could barely hold it back. Tyr thought that Charlotte was brave enough, so the girl didn't have to worry about him. It's just a bunch of rocks, he can handle it on his own. At this moment, the boss girl was very embarrassed by the nasty boy who licked her leg. Charlotte got agility plus 340 points. He cleared his throat and said he was finally out. The girl thought about how the young man dared to dirty her feet. He's gonna pay for this. The system window reported that the young man did not have a weapon with him, and it was impossible to use the instant slash skill. Charlotte said it was just disgusting. He knew he had to take his weapons with him. He rushed to the girl with the thought that now all that remained was to use the tip of the pen. He swung, but the girl dodged with dexterity. In response, she kicked him. The girl touched the young man's face with her foot. Suddenly, she realized that the youth's face was so soft. Then the young man flew towards the wall. The girl thought that she had pushed the young man very well. The system window stated that the girl's interest level had increased to 54%. The girl clutched her head and did not understand what she was thinking about. She took the tail with her threads and thought that he should help her kill this guy. This is in case the people outside still managed to reach Senior Nui's room. The girl awkwardly pulled at the threads. She grabbed the tail of her dead puppet. She looked at Charlotte and mentally told him to come over. Then she swung the scorpion's tail towards the young man, but he dodged. Charlotte thought that he would have enough agility to dodge the girl's attacks. He activated his magic power and thought that all the magic power would accumulate in his hand. Then he broke the scorpion's tail with his hand. Suddenly, a girl's foot was next to his face. She grabbed the youth's neck with her foot again. The girl pushed Charlotte against the wall. She said that she had managed to grab the young man again. This time he won't be able to get away from her because she'll strangle him with her feet. Charlotte frowned. He thought for the girl to feel the force of his hand's grip, and then he extended his hand. The girl screamed and was embarrassed. Charlotte gained protection by 130 points. The girl put her foot on the young man's face. She told him not to dare use his disgusting hands, because he had already touched her foot. The remnants of the scorpion's tail grabbed Charlotte's hands. The young man thought that he had just cut through the tail of the scorpion Ziwei, but the girl was holding him so tightly that now he would not be able to dodge. The girl said that she would immediately crush the young man's head. Charlotte gained stamina of 50 points. And sensitivity of 71 points, as well as magic power of 93 points. The girl thought that she felt very strange. Her heart is getting more and more pleased with the fact that she is stepping on a young man of her own. It's like she wants to step on his entire body. She's bursting with interest. The girl increased her interest by 66%. She thought that everyone from the human race deserved to be only under her feet. At this moment, the scorpion puppet was all twisted up. People thought that the Warcraft boss seemed to be getting a little tired. He's losing his grip and they need to put in as much effort as possible. They're trying to win. At that moment, Charlotte saw the boss's foot. He gained plus 240 points to his attack power. The girl was very confused and thought what a lovely feeling it was. She raised her interest level to 89%. At that moment, Bella was running towards the rocks, but the monster's tail was pointing towards the girl. Tyr shouted at Bella to be careful, because the monster's tail was behind her. The girl saw the tail of the monster. Then she was able to deflect the monster's tail. Tyr shouted the girl's name. Bella was thrown into the wall right behind Sirius. At that moment, Charlotte was very confused. He asked the boss to wait and said that wouldn't do. The girl deftly wielded her legs. At that moment, the monster's tail attacked Sirius. Sirius was able to repel the monster's attack. He hit the wall with his tail. Sirius was surprised and thought about how long the tail would have to be to hit the wall. The level of this Warcraft boss surpassed the most outstanding bosses in all respects. It was amazing. At that moment, the girl reached a level of interest of up to 95%. The girl said it was such a good and gentle feeling, which was too wonderful. The monster was attacking Sirius. The man thought that things were very bad, but no one was paying attention. He realized that the monster's claws had launched an attack, but it was too late, and there was no escaping it. At that moment, the girl screamed with pleasure. The monster shook. He stopped his claws right next to Sirius. The man started to open his eyes. He realized that he had succeeded, and he stopped the monster. At this moment, the monster was confused. Sirius fought off the monster's claw. Sirius then used an attacking combo. He pushed the monster aside. People were shouting that the captain had leveled up and become very strong. With one blow, he knocked the Warcraft boss to the ground. Their captain is definitely an A rank now. At that moment, the girl was 98% interested. She was screaming with pleasure. The monster was writhing with pleasure at that moment. People were shouting that they had overthrown the boss of Warcraft. It's all thanks to the captain's mighty strength. Now they don't have to be afraid of Warcraft bosses. They will call their captain, and he will show everyone. Sirius thought that this boss was somehow weak, and he could still win. At this moment, the girl was pressing even harder on Charlotte. The monster began to scratch the ground with its paws. Sirius told everyone to disperse, and he's going to figure it out now. He asked them all to take a look at the monster. They decide to look at the real strength of the captain of rank A. At this moment, the girl does not understand what is wrong with her and what is happening. She thinks it's a little weird to do this with a real human body. The girl is trying to catch her breath. It seems to her that she just needs to calm down a little. At this moment, Charlotte thinks that the girl has a very flexible body and especially flexible legs. If she continued to put pressure on the young man's body, it would simply not be able to stand it. Charlotte was very embarrassed. He stood up and shouted that this would not happen to him. Suddenly, the girl pointed her foot right into the young man's mouth. Charlotte sighed. The girl said she didn't even want to hear those disgusting sounds and it was just freezing. Charlotte sighed slightly. He received several characteristics: vitality plus 1,602 points, concentration by 2,051 points, and endurance by 2,167 points. At that moment, the scorpion puppet monster began to move. Sirius thought it was starting again. The girl was overwhelmed by strong feelings. The monster grabbed Sirius's sword, which surprised him greatly. He invoked the Holy Vortex skill. This was Captain Sirius's signature skill. The man swung his blade and knocked the monster aside. The monster fell to the ground. Sirius stood and looked at him. The monster was strangely twisted and was just delighted. At that moment, people were surprised that the captain was so strong. This day, he beat the giant boss of Warcraft unconscious. He screamed so loudly. They called on the captain to deliver the final decisive blow to this boss of Warcraft. The girl picked up her burden. Scorpio continued to enjoy himself. Sirius said that the boss of Warcraft, who so mercilessly attacked the people gathered here, and was defeated. Charlotte received protection of 3,304 points, agility of 4,010 points, and perception of 3,205 points. Sirius was chopping up the monster and wondering if it was really that strong. The boss girl screamed with pleasure. Suddenly, the girl heard a voice saying that it had become very noisy outside. She thought fearfully of Lord Neely. The girl immediately jumped away from Charlotte. She landed not far from him and freed the young man. The girl thought, "This is the end. She seems to have completely forgotten what she's here for. She has a request from Lord Neely himself. She needed to hurry up and get rid of all the people here as soon as possible." The girl looked menacingly and thought that she would succeed. Charlotte received plus 10,000 attack points. He asked the girl if she wanted to continue this battle. The girl was surprised and asked how it was, because just recently, Charlotte didn't feel like that. She realized that he was the same as Lord Neely. He exudes terrible pressure. She didn't understand if she needed to continue fighting with the youth like before. Charlotte had an overwhelming aura. She realized that she had to run. Charlotte realized that the girl had run away somewhere. He didn't know if he should catch up with her, or if he could just leave it all. He only hopes that the place of the boss of the blood of the gods will not take away so much of his strength. At that moment, people were calling for the captain and rejoicing. At that moment, Bella ran towards the rocks. Charlotte kicked out the stone with his foot. He saw Bella and called her. The girl asked Charlotte if he was okay and if he was hurt. Charlotte said he was fine. Bella said that the young man's whole body was covered in dust, although he seemed to be fine and maybe something had happened to his body. She wants to go to the medical team of the squad and check it out. Charlotte said he was fine. Bella said that if the young man suddenly feels unwell, he will immediately inform her. Charlotte said she knows. Sirius was happy and told everyone to listen to him, and he would show them what real power was. He's gonna kill this boss. Sirius thinks that the danger rank of this dungeon isn't even C. It's barely a D rank. This time, he captured a D rank dungeon and received a C rank reward for it. And the fact that he himself defeated the boss of Warcraft promises him a good reputation. When they return to the Daredevil Guild, he will definitely be rewarded for killing the boss. At that moment, the girl came to Lord Neely. She said that a very powerful man was approaching him. She can't figure out what kind of method he used. Initially, he was very weak. But then, everything changed dramatically, and he became extremely strong. She asked the Lord to be careful. The Lord turned to a girl named Shatil. The girl looked at the Lord. He asked her about her assignment. In a panic, Shatil said that she had been instructed not to let anyone into the blood of the gods, and in case of penetration, to kill them. Then he told the girl to explain to him what he was doing here. The girl turned to Lord Neely. The next moment, a yellow ray pierced through her chest. The girl's body exploded in a fiery explosion. The boss of the dungeon, Neely, said that he wasn't going to listen to her excuses. The girl fell to the ground. Lord Neely held up his fingers. The girl's body flew into a pile of other bodies. She landed with other bodies. Lord Neely said that the girl just became fuel for the fire. The girl thought that she didn't want to die here. Lord Neely said that after so many years of almost perfect work, he sacrificed a lot of people, as well as monsters, for fuel. The blood of the gods finally began to boil. Suddenly, the gates to the premises exploded. Someone stepped into the room where Lord Neely was. Lord Neely said, "Who is so brave and fearless that he decided to come here." Sirius said that they were brave people who could scare him well on their own. That's who came to see him. The system window informed Charlotte that the blood of the gods would help him get rid of the toxin in his body. Lord Neely said that this guy is the one who, at first glance, seems different. The one Chatil was talking about. Charlotte was surprised that this liquid would help him recover and heal. Sirius started giving orders and said that no one should do anything that wasn't ordered by him personally. He decides to kill this boss from a level C dungeon. All the warriors supported him. He said to let the whole of Warcraft experience the true fiery power of the human race. Charlotte was surprised and said that there seemed to be the same blood of the gods. Suddenly, a huge magical seal appeared right above Lord Neely. The warriors shouted to the captain to run, because the magic seal must be destroyed. The Lord started to raise his hand as Sirius approached him. The man said that everyone should feel the terrifying aura of Captain Sirius. Lord Neely began to emit yellow magic from his finger. Suddenly, the magic from the finger began to grow stronger. Sirius's entire armor began to crumble from the yellow ray. Lord Neely pushed Sirius away from him. The warriors started calling for Captain Sirius. The captain crashed into a stone wall. All his armor crumbled. The warriors ran to the captain and began to call him. Lord Neely said that this was the strongest person the girl was talking about. Chatil is really incapable of anything. Sirius thought that the boss's strength couldn't be that good. He had damaged his A-level defense with just one hit, and he wasn't as weak as he turned out to be. How lucky he was that he still had the S-level protection that his father had given him, and he could have just died that way. The warriors asked Captain Sirius if he was okay. They saw that the captain's defenses had been destroyed. Sirius couldn't figure out what was wrong with this dungeon. He doesn't understand why the Warcraft bosses have such a big difference in power levels. He's afraid he won't be able to fight directly, so in this case, it's best for him to work on the strength of their squad. The only way they can defeat this Warcraft boss. When he loosens his grip once more, he once again directed his attack at him. Then his chances of winning will increase significantly. Sirius started shouting and giving a command. He ordered everyone to load their bows. He told the warriors that they all had to show what they were really capable of. The deputy captain turned to Sirius and said that an insane attack, directed completely without any deliberate course of action, could lead to unnecessary casualties. After all, they can also use those old tactics with a large shield in front. Sirius screamed and asked the young man if he really doubted his plan and the effectiveness of his actions. Could it be that he also wants to disobey the captain's orders? The man said that everything was completely wrong, and he did not want to disobey in any way. Sirius told him to stop talking nonsense and do as he was told, because that was the captain's order. He should just do what he's asked to do, and there's nothing complicated about it. Then Sirius turned away and told everyone to pull themselves together and not be afraid. He will stand up to the last and always remain their loyal supporter. He gave the order to attack, and all the warriors rushed to the attack. Lord Neely said that human flesh and blood are not even proud for a bonfire. They are not worthy even for that, because they are very pathetic. He wants people to know something, that there is a difference between humans and monsters. This difference is extremely huge. Lord Neely used his attack. Charlotte grabbed the vice captain and Bella, and then threw them away from the beam. A cry of pain could be heard from the other warriors. The bodies of the warriors began to fall apart. Lord Neely finished his attack. One of the warriors remained near the abyss. It was Sirius. He was looking at his molten sword. Lord Neely was flying right over the abyss. He turned to Sirius and said that hadn't Sirius said that he wanted him to feel his terrible power. Sirius realized that there was nothing he could do. He wants to get out of here as soon as possible. The deputy captain looks at someone's burnt hand. Sirius runs away and shouts to everyone that they are retreating. He orders everyone to retreat. The deputy started crying and said that Sirius was an impudent fool for not listening to him. Suddenly, someone grabs Sirius's hand. Charlotte turns to the captain and says that he has told them all, his team members, that he will always remain their firm supporter, no matter what happens, and the battle with the boss is not over yet. He says the captain can't go anywhere. Sirius said that he is Captain Charlotte, so he has to do what he says. If he wants to stay and die, he has to stay and die. Lord Neely interrupted the guys and said that he had brazenly barged into his cave, and now they were going to escape. Sirius screamed. He told Charlotte that the baking trays were in the back, so he should look around. The boss is currently using a light wave. Sirius thought that he couldn't get his hand out of Charlotte's grip. He doesn't understand why the young man is so strong. Sirius shouted that the boss was already aiming in their direction. He asked Charlotte to remove her hand. Sirius swung and said he was ordering Charlotte to let go of his hand. realizes that he can't beat the boss, but that doesn't mean he can't beat Charlotte. Sirius punches Charlotte in the chest. Suddenly, the young man grabs the captain's hand and squeezes it. Sirius starts screaming. Charlotte told Sirius that as a conscientious captain, they should keep their word. Lord Neely uses his attack. Charlotte turns to Lord Neely. Charlotte told Sirius to be a reliable, firm supporter of his squad and threw him aside. He told Sirius to stop the boss's attacks with himself and shield his allies with his body. The boss's attack almost reached Sirius's face. The remaining warriors were fleeing in panic. Sirius lost consciousness. His body was slowly falling. Sirius's body fell right under the warrior's feet. The man screamed in panic. Charlotte took his sword and said it was his turn now. Bella turned to a substitute and said she wanted to stay here. The deputy said that he would also stay here and fight the monsters. Bella turned to Tierra and said that he shouldn't do it. She's staying here because of Charlotte. Tierra replied that he was aware of it. He reported that he is a first-class B. He will only stay to destroy the boss of Warcraft. He will never back down and no longer wants to take orders from Sirius. Lord Nelly said that after seeing his strength, he didn't even run away. He has high expectations of his powers. Suddenly, Charlotte was right in front of him, swinging his sword. He used an instant strike directly on the boss's arm. Charlotte manages to make an attack, but the monster dodges. Lord Neely is surprised by the impressive speed. Charlotte gets up on the ground. He ignored Lord Neely and shouted that he was running to the antidote of the blood of the gods. Lord Neely was surprised. The monster didn't understand why Charlotte was running down the aisle. He understands that the purpose of this boy is not to kill him, but something completely different. He thinks that the young man wants to get the blood of the gods. Charlotte ran towards the cauldron with the antidote. A little more, and he would have been able to achieve his goal. Neely shouted that ordinary people didn't dare approach her altar. While the monster was distracted, Bella and Tyr attacked it. The vice captain discovered the monster's weak point. He swung his sword. However, the dungeon boss caught their weapons. Neely pointed her hand towards the hero to attack. She was surprised by his speed and compared Charlotte to a running cockroach. Bella saw it. She said that she did not dare to attack her friend. The girl ran towards the monster. The monster didn't expect this and stumbled, causing her attack to miss. The beam struck right next to Charlotte's head. He jumped away from the explosion closer to the altar. The hero had already stretched out his hand, but noticed that he could not get close to the blood of the gods. He noticed that a pentagram was burning around the altar. Right in front of him was his long-awaited antidote, but he hadn't expected to see a magic barrier. After Charlotte tried to get closer to the cauldron, the protection activated and radiated power. The guy was thrown away, and he hit a stone wall. Neely said that he had drawn this magical barrier with his own hands, and as long as he was alive, no one would be able to walk through it. Slowly getting up, the hero agreed that the extraction of the antidote could not be so simple, and it was impossible to take it without any effort. He was breathing heavily and accepted the fact that he would have to fight the boss. Through a crack in the wall, Charlotte noticed someone hiding there. Bella and Tyr continued to attack the monster, but the dungeon boss knocked them back every time. He said they overestimate their abilities. The warriors fell to the ground after being thrown back. The hero was surprised to see the previous boss, a girl, as he believed that she had run away or died. She was trembling and asked him not to make any noise and not to tell the Lord where she was. Due to her condition, Charlotte did not understand who the boss of Warcraft had become. The hero's friends stood up while the enemy talked about wanting to die peacefully and break into their city. He wanted to vent his anger on helpless people. Charlotte remembered about Bella and wanted to go help. But before that, he left the mushroom in front of the gap where Shatil was hiding. She didn't expect to see a mushroom with a blossoming power effect. The hero ran to his girlfriend. The Warcraft boss took the gift and took a bite. She started to cry. Thus, she improved the skill Love for the Brave. For Charlotte, this action opened up a new weapon. The dungeon boss was already next to Tyr, who was trying to cover Bella, and the hero was running with all his might. Cards with a question and a detailed explanation of the user's rules appeared in front of him. Neely already wanted to capture the warriors. The vice captain shouted at the girl to leave, but she couldn't because of her broken leg. Bella asked her to leave her and run on her own. Charlotte was annoyed by the cards that appeared. He needed to save people. He didn't have time to listen to the management system. He wanted his weapon returned to him as soon as possible. The detailed explanation of the rules of use was skipped, and the system asked to take one card, which the hero did. He received a divine sword with the special power of exploding clothes. The guy was already close to the enemy. He jumped and attacked in the air. The hero lowered his weapon and told the monster to see what kind of sword he had, but the blade was caught by the monster's bare hands. He laughed and said that Charlotte had been deceived. Neely added that it was a common fake. The hero was his main target. The boss admitted that he was a man with incredibly powerful strength and improved agility, but compared his abilities to cockroaches. For the monster, the attack was close, but now he wanted to see if the guy could hide now. Seeing the chance, Charlotte swung his sword once more, declared that he was underestimated and he was not going to hide. The hero was able to scratch the palm of the enemy. He just laughed at her. He didn't understand what Charlotte was capable of. The monster asked him to face the truth. Even if he did his best, there would still be no wounds on the monster's body. At that moment, the clothes on her body were torn into shreds. My body opened up. The dungeon boss didn't expect this. He shouted where his clothes had gone. Tyr and Bella were confused and mesmerized. Charlotte's nose started bleeding. He commented that this boss is very strong. His sword has contributed to the loss of clothing from the opponent, who will now be without it during the fight. She was confused. She was unhappy that this man dared to use such a skill on the dungeon boss. If he could, he would have destroyed the hero right away. Charlotte swung his sword for another blow. The monster was covering his body with his hands, but the hero missed because Neely managed to dodge. The guy understood the logic of the sword's operation, since before that it hit her palm and the clothes on top burst. Now he needs to do it again, just attack her legs so that her undergarments come off. After that, Charlotte was going to throw off her mask, and the last thing left was to kill the monster. All he had to do was get close to the boss and use the fast slaughter, which she would not be able to escape from. The hero has enough magic left to use this skill 6 times with a 10-second cooldown. Upon learning this, the hero said that this ability was not effective. The system asked if he wanted to disable the skill, but he replied in the negative. Once Charlotte was offered, he decided to try. The guy used the ability and quickly moved towards her. She jumped up and down to avoid being hit. Blunders angered the hero. The dungeon boss didn't understand why the opponent was aiming at his legs and assumed if he wanted to pull down his skirt. Charlotte swung his sword once more. The monster screamed and called the guy dirty. Neely kicked the hero right in the face. The impact sent him flying several meters away. However, the guy was able to stop himself with the help of his sword. He was in pain. His nose almost broke, but it was nothing compared to how his body was melting from toxins. He ran at the monster again, shouting that her attack was nothing to him. The countdown started. Neely waved her finger. She pointed it at the hero. The guy dodged the beam. There was an explosion where the monster's attack hit. 10 seconds have passed. Neely screamed that the man was able to dodge her punch. Charlotte's recharge was complete. He aimed at the legs at close range with a quick massacre. The hero struck with his sword. He was able to strike. There was green monster blood on the tip. But then the guy noticed that something had gone wrong. She was right above him. She was standing on her tail. The monster said it wasn't going to run away. Before the attack, the boss added that he would have attacked more seriously if he hadn't been afraid of burning his chest. The hero seemed slow to him. She would have destroyed it long ago. A powerful beam struck next to Charlotte, who managed to jump back. Neely directed her attack towards the hero. The beam pursued him. He couldn't use quick slaughter because of the cooldown. Due to the tense situation, 10 seconds seemed like an eternity to him. He had no choice but to go directly. With his weapon, Charlotte hit the beam. This caused an explosion. The air hit Tyr and Bella. The vice captain did not believe that Cirrus had just repelled the boss's attack, because before the expedition, his overall combat score was F rank. Even he, a B rank fighter, would be useless in such a situation. Charlotte marveled at the attributes of his sword. The guy told the monster that he could now deflect its attacks and dodge them. She agreed with him. Killing a hero won't be easy for her. However, she can easily kill a woman with a broken leg. The monster turned to Bella and pointed her finger at her. Charlotte stopped her from releasing her death ray. He managed to use quick slaughter and cut off a long part of her nail. The monster wasn't prepared for this. Now it was slow for the hero. He ran to his girlfriend while the monster was recovering. She was annoyed by the heroism of people. She decided to attack from behind while Charlotte was running towards her companions. The monster released a beam. She had fooled him again. The hero ran as fast as he could, but he knew he wouldn't make it. However, he came up with the idea to block the system. Charlotte abruptly turned around and used a quick massacre to protect the guys. The vibration and wind caused Bella's armor to shatter. Tyr's armor was also shattered. The hero made it in time. He beat off Neely's attack. and she hit not the captain and her friend, but a stone wall. She was unhappy that he had managed to reflect her beam again. She noticed that something was happening near the altar, the monster exclaimed. She was so engrossed in the fight that she forgot to add wood to the fire to keep the demon god's blood warm. The monster understood that all efforts would be in vain if he did not figure out the temperature of the altar. Otherwise, he would have to wait. Meanwhile, Bella was feeling weird and hot. She blushed. The degree of mixing reached 91%. The girl took the face of the uncomprehending Charlotte in her hands. She approached him. Tear paled. He hadn't expected this. Bella opened her mouth, intending to kiss her friend, who froze. Looking at his friend, he remembered her little girl at the age of 8, when she, with snot and unsympathetic, asked with interest why the hero was chasing such a beautiful woman like her, and if he wanted to kiss this beautiful lady. The memories made him jump away from the already grown-up Bella with a scream. Charlotte didn't want to kiss her even now, and the shooting gallery with wide eyes asked the girl what she was doing. My friend came to her senses. She didn't understand her actions. Her body seemed to move on its own. Bella even stuck out her tongue for a kiss, and did it in the middle of the battle. Tyre noticed her condition. Her face was red, and she was sweating profusely. He asked if she was poisoned, and if she was hallucinating that. The guy clarified if she couldn't control her body, otherwise she wouldn't behave like this. Bella was very ashamed. Neely, continuing to cover herself, said that as soon as the blood of the demons cools down, it will take several more years before it boils. She didn't want to wait that long. The monster used her power to lift the bodies of the dead monsters. One by one, the dungeon boss sent them into the fire. She must completely burn the blood of the demon god dry. Charlotte got nervous because of her intentions. Because it's his antidote. He had to stop it, but Neely was too fast, so the hero wasn't sure if he could hit it. However, he had a plan. He readied his sword, which increased its power to such a state that the boss would no longer be able to deflect attacks. She tossed the bodies like firewood. She hoped that it would be enough for the temperature of the altar to rise to its maximum. Charlotte abruptly grabbed Red Bella's hand. He said that he had figured out how they could defeat the boss. To do this, he needs her help. They have to get closer to their white bodies. The girl, listening to the idea, blushed more and more. Even Tyr was embarrassed. He was outraged by the way Charlotte said such vulgar things with a serious face, but the plan allowed the hero to increase his strength and defeat the boss. The guy understood that it would not be easy for the girl, but he continued to hold her hand, asking for help. The degree of mixing reached 93%. Tyr grabbed Charlotte's hand. He told the soldier that this was nonsense, and the hero just wanted to take advantage of Bella. The vice captain reminded them that they were in the middle of a battle, and shamed him for having time to think about such dirty things anyway. Tyr turned to the girl and asked her not to believe the madman, but she had already trusted Cirrus. The captain was in an unpleasant shock. Bella was very embarrassed. She told Charlotte that she was only doing this to defeat the dungeon boss. The girl approached him and put his face in her hands. He was sweating profusely. He remembered little Bella again, who wanted to play family with the hero. In the flashback, she was also going to kiss him. Charlotte confused the past with the present, and screamed that he did not want to play this game. Tyr was furious. He clutched his head and asked not to do it in front of his eyes. As in the past, Charlotte pushed the girl away with a scream. He was on the verge of death, and Bella did not understand why Ceres pushed her away. The system notified the hero that his rank had increased by 1, and his stats had increased by 5,000 points. It happened because of Tyr's reaction. Now he doesn't have to touch Bella and replay the terrible memories over and over again. He calmly told his friend that they would not do it, since it was not easy for her. Now he can generally defeat the boss. Bella slowly got to her feet. She tried to stop him, because she was worried that he would not be able to defeat the monster. Red and hot, the girl asked if he was sure he didn't need help. The degree of mixing has increased to 99%. With indifference, Charlotte replied that it was not necessary. He ran into battle, and the girl with a sad face asked the reason. It seemed to her that Cirrus didn't like her at all. Tyr was in a bad mood and angry. He said he could see how strong Charlotte was and could understand why she liked him, but he had to ask her about it. The girl replied uncertainly that this was the one. Heading towards her, the hero activated the finishing move to hit her legs and head at the same time. Previously, he almost got hit in the legs, but now all his stats have been increased by 5,000 points. Charlotte will be able to get in if she finds the right moment to use quick slaughter. The monster had no connection to the altar. She didn't understand why the temperature was still low, If she can't fix it, the temperature will drop faster. She decided that she was using people as fuel for the fire. The boss rose above the ground. She said that mortals should be proud, as they would become firewood for her sacrifice. This is the highest reward that Neely can offer them. She began to form a ball with a powerful force that she was going to show people. Neely was supposed to kill them. The ball has grown to a huge size. He was approaching Charlotte, who was trying to stop him with a sword. Magic points were rapidly being used up. They dropped to 1704. The hero eventually managed to repel the attack with his own efforts. The magic ball spread out in the air. Magic points dropped to 11 out of 3,670. Neely was grinning. Now Charlotte couldn't use any skills due to her low magic points. The hero was afraid of this. The boss said that the guy's magic power was depleted, so we can say that the fight is over. Charlotte denied it. Bella came up to him. She hugged him reverently and told him that he needed her help after all. Tyr was heartbroken. Mentally, the girl turned to him, saying that he was a good person, but her heart had already been occupied since childhood. And that hasn't changed. Bella hugged Charlotte to her chest. His rank has increased by 5. He felt a real surge of surging energy. The characteristics have increased by 27,500. Bright light surrounded the couple. The air hit her. She didn't believe that he would be able to fight back against her in this state. Charlotte was filled with power. He got into a fighting stance. But still, she wasn't impressed. She didn't care how much his strength increased. He was still a pitiful mortal for a monster. In an instant, the hero disappeared in front of her. Charlotte struck. The boss was confident that he would repel any of his attacks. The soldier used a quick massacre. He hit the enemy. Her mask shattered, and a scratch appeared on her face. The Divine Sword ult has been unlocked for the guy. The Descent of the Holy Sword. She was furious that a man dared to ruin her face. She won't forgive him. Instantly, a huge ball of energy formed above her. All her strength was poured into it. Charlotte raised his sword, ready to defend himself. The dungeon boss shouted that he would destroy them all, and threw the ball towards the hero. He swung his sword. Charlotte managed to break through her attack. The energy came back to her. The ground beneath her was collapsing into small stones. The hero stayed on his feet while the wind and powerful force swept past him. The blow hit the stone wall. However, Bella and Tyr were caught in a strong wind that hit them. When everything cleared up, naked, she tried to get up. Charlotte announced her victory. The system showed that the cooldown for the Descent of the Holy Sword will last 20 seconds. The boss couldn't lift him up and was lying exhausted on the ground. The hero is gone. He wanted to go to the altar. However, I couldn't climb it. Charlotte didn't understand why the protection was still working. Neely said that she would not allow pitiful people to touch the demon god. The information window showed that there were 9 seconds left until the next attack. The hero told the boss that he would destroy him soon, but he heard Tyr calling Belle. She had a critically low level of health, on the verge of death. The captain also had no strength. The monster roared. He was ready to attack and test the man once more. The barrier in front of the altar disappeared. Charlotte faced a difficult choice. He swept past the opponent. The hero carefully picked up Bella, and then he grabbed Tyr by the shirt. He was going to get out of the battlefield with his comrades and ran towards the exit. She didn't even have the strength left to stand, and she fell to her knees. The monster thought they had run away and called them stupid people. Charlotte asked the system for a map to find the shortest way to the exit. He ran through the corridors of the dungeon. He needs to get his friends to the guild hospital as soon as possible. But the enemy was waiting for him around the corner. A huge insect attacked him. Bella slowly began to come to her senses. She remembered how, as a child, they laughed at her because of her appearance and called her a scary girl with whom no one wants to kiss and play. The bully laughed and said that with her appearance, only a crow in the garden could be driven away instead of a scarecrow. Little Charlotte was standing next to her. One of his friends took his hand and told him not to approach it. Otherwise, he would get infected with something and become a freak. Instead of spending time with the girl, they invited him to play basketball. But the hero hit the boy. As in the past, he continued to protect the girl. Charlotte cut the monster in half with his sharp monster sword. He used a quick massacre. Other insects moved towards him. Little Charlotte came up to Bella and offered to continue playing family. He is the father, and she is the mother. He kissed her on the forehead and added that it was up to him to take care of her. The monsters dropped dead. The hero continued to run forward, telling his girlfriend that everything would be fine. Neely walked over to the cauldron. She won't let the temperature drop. The boss stood up, ready to do what he had planned. The monster fell into the fire. sacrificing himself. The monster was spitting out fire. The flame devoured and destroyed everything it could reach. The hero and the guys were able to bypass the fire from above. Her body was on fire. She turned to the demon god and said that she would no longer be able to serve him. Charlotte used a quick massacre and cut off the dragon's head. She fell with a crash. The hero noticed that his divine sword had evaporated and did not understand why. The system notified that the enemy had been defeated, and therefore the sword returned to the system. Now the weapon will return only after 12 hours. Charlotte didn't have time to think, so he continued walking towards the exit. The punishment group and their captain finally got out of the dungeon. Cyrus was injured, so he was supported by a soldier. His armor was made of dragon scales, but even so, it was shattered. He blamed Cyrus for this. Whereas one of his warriors said that he should have already been killed by the boss, but then they noticed Charlotte. The soldiers shouted that the hero was still alive, which Captain Sirius did not expect to hear. The guy confidently and with a serious face finally went outside with his friends. Sirius thought that he had quietly gone after them, and therefore was able to get out. The captain pulled out his sword and asked how Charlotte dared to disobey his orders and desert. He stated that the hero was no longer a member of their team. Sirius ran towards the captain. The captain warned him not to use their medicines to support his life, because his life would end right now. He was going to execute him. However, he didn't have time to finish, because Charlotte landed with her foot on his face. This caused the captain to fall to the ground. The hero replied that he didn't have time to talk. Sirius continued on his way to the hospital while the soldiers surrounded their captain. They were unhappy that the insolent man dared to treat their commander like that. Sirius was unconscious. The soldiers wanted to take their boss to the hospital. The guild hospital received the injured. Doctors were urgently preparing them for surgery. Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief that he had finally reached his destination. He headed back to the dungeon. The hero was one step away from obtaining the blood of the gods antidote. Meanwhile, a red liquid burst out of the cauldron. It spread all over the altar. A tall door with a bell appeared from it. Chantil, watching this from her hiding place, wondered what she had achieved by sacrificing herself. Pale hands appeared from the fabric of the door. Cold air swept through the room. Chantil was scared. She had a chilling feeling. It's like countless needles are piercing into the bones. A man appeared from the doorway. His hair was as red as blood. He could smell a familiar scent. The creature was glad to be back home. Azathoth, the demon god, welcomed the human world. Chantil ran away in terror. It was dangerous to stay. The monster noticed movement in the gap and was instantly near it. It was enough for the demon god to touch a stone wall to destroy it. But the blow went further up. The lower monsters screamed and fell. The floor was exploding beneath them. The bodies landed right in front of Azathoth. The monsters fell right to the very bottom of the dungeon. They were in pain. They didn't understand if her plans had come true. And then, one of them noticed a humanoid creature. The goblins began to wonder who was able to destroy an entire dungeon. They thought Lord Nye had done it, but Azathoth replied that he was dead. He needed a new servant. The monsters froze after hearing about the death of the boss. They didn't know what they had to do. One of them knelt before the demon god and said that the monsters were a bloodline that had been returning with great power for many years, and added that he was willing to follow someone more powerful than Lord Nye. He asked for a favor. The other goblins joined in. They were ready to serve Azathoth to the death. But the demon god did not appreciate the sacrifice of the monsters. It was disgusting to him. With just a glance, he crushed every single goblin. Azathoth didn't need pathetic minions. He landed in front of Chantil, who was sitting on the ground. Azathoth approached her and said that she looked good. The demon god ordered her to raise her head and open her mouth. She complied with tears in her eyes. He cut his palm and gave her his blood to drink. Chantil felt her body begin to heal. She felt good. Azathoth lifted her chin and suggested that her body was pleasant. The demon god explained that his blood can heal any disease, increase stamina, and strengthen the immune system. And at the same time, it can bring unprecedented pleasure. He ordered her to find a clean room and wait for him there. It was getting dark. At the guild headquarters, a beaten warrior was pinned to a table. Darren was asking poor Sirius how the mission could have failed. The captain asked for help, because otherwise he would lose his position and would have to audit all the remaining assets of the guild. If it turns out that they were secretly selling guild resources, then there will be more problems. Darren released the dressing man. He shouted that he knew about it. Sirius was asked if any of his team had violated the order, and he replied that it was Sirius. Darren suggested blaming the failure of the mission on the F-rank guy. In this scenario, he will be sentenced to death for desertion. Charlotte denied what he saw. He was standing near the altar and did not understand how the ceiling of the dungeon could collapse. The guy rushed to the antidote to see what condition it was in, but he didn't see it. The cauldron was empty. Meanwhile, night turned to day. Shatil was sitting in the room. She was touched from behind. She asked the demon god not to do what he was planning. Abruptly, Azathoth pressed her to him from behind. Shatil felt something soft touching her back. She was surprised. Azathoth breathed into her pointed ears, which turned red. Startled, Shatil jerked and pulled away from the creature's embrace. There was a girl in front of her. She asked if she liked hugs. Shatil recognized Azathoth in her and asked how he was able to reincarnate. The demon god replied that at night he loses his power and assumes his true form, female, and it is at night that she must protect her god. He ordered Shatil to kill all those who are hostile to him. Holding her chin, Azathoth explained that she had drunk his blood that afternoon and allowed him to connect with her own, and now he could control her body through her blood. The demon god could kill her at any second, so she had to be obedient. Charlotte searched everywhere, and once again he saw an empty room. However, the guy still had hope. He believed that the blood of demons must be somewhere in the city. The hero opened the map through the system, intending to search every corner. Azathoth said that his heart is sealed in the hero guild. He's not in the best shape right now, so he turns into a weak person at night. But there's always a day after every night. After Azathoth regains his strength, he will go straight to the guild headquarters and regain his heart. When that happens, every monster will bow to the might of the demon god. Shatil heard that someone was near their room. She said she was going to check it out. Azathoth called Sadiel. The girl warned that she should be at a distance of 5 kilometers from her during the battle. If Shatil goes beyond this radius, then Azathoth will decide that she has decided to run, and then he will melt her body. The servant understood her. Charlotte raced down the hallway. He knew for sure that he was close. He had one last room left to check. The blood of the gods should definitely be there. Shatil was standing around the corner, ready to kick, but Charlotte managed to dodge. Sadiel hadn't expected to see a human. At this time, the demon god was trembling with desire. This could happen if Azathoth was near his heart. Shatil asked why the hero had returned if Lord Nai was dead. She advised him to run before the day came. Charlotte noticed that she had regained enough strength to fight. He asked if she liked the mushroom-flavored treat. The girl blushed at the question. Embarrassed, she replied that it was absolutely tasteless and added that it was the most disgusting mushroom she had ever eaten. The system showed the hero that the mixing system was 71%. Charlotte pointed out that the girl was blushing. He didn't expect her to be happy to see him. Shatil shouted at him not to talk nonsense and tried to kick, but missed. The girl added that she was not at all happy to see him, and she did not have any kind feelings for him. This time, she managed to punch the hero in the face. She screamed that her real feelings for the man were disgust. However, Shatil continued to blush. The monster wanted to hit the guy again, but he disappeared under her feet. Despite being hit in the face, the hero still escaped. Charlotte, running away, said that he had urgent business, so they would talk later. He felt that the blood of the gods was right outside the door of the last room. The hero did not have time to open the doors himself, as Azathoth beat him to it. However, the guy thought that this was a man. Shatil asked why the demon god came out. He showed her a sign not to move. Azathoth approached Charlotte and grabbed her crotch. The guy didn't expect this and screamed. There was a ball of power inside him. It was the heart of Azathoth. He understood why it was in the human body. Meanwhile, Charlotte turned pale from the pain. He pushed the girl away and asked what she was going to do. The hero, touching her, felt that the blood of the gods was flowing in her. He asked how his antidote became human. Suddenly, Charlotte grabbed her hand and made a cut on her palm. He had an idea that the girl's blood was his antidote. He put his lips to the scratch and started drinking. From this action, Azathoth blushed and groaned. However, the system notified him that it did not help, and he had 101 days left to live. Charlotte didn't know why it didn't work. The demon god knew the answer to that question. Blood wouldn't help as long as it was in a human's body. They were interrupted by Shatil's attack. The hero had to let go of the girl's hand to avoid being hit by the monster. The guy jumped away from the couple. Azathoth was not happy that his heart had been absorbed by a human and turned into an essence in his pitiful body. The demon god wanted to regain his strength. He decided that he would forcibly devour his heart. Then Charlotte would turn into a pool of blood, which would be his punishment for using the demon's power without permission. The hero suggested that perhaps another fluid from her body would help him. But now it was more important to get out of the ruined dungeon and calmly think about everything. A huge spider burst out of the ground. She greeted Lord Satos and said that she felt his presence from 1,000 miles away, and the feeling was driving her crazy. She added that the bell that the Lord had given her had not been removed for a minute. It was Gan's boss. The spider has already proved her loyalty. She was asking for permission to eat the demon god, so he would belong only to her. Ganna charged towards Azathoth, but Charlotte grabbed him. He rushed out of the room, carrying the girl. The spider did not expect this. She watched as the hero and the Lord jumped out of the hole in the wall. As he ran, the guy wondered how the boss appeared out of nowhere. It annoyed him. Right now, Charlotte was going to take his hope of salvation to a safe place. Ganna rushed after them, demanding the return of the Lord. She screamed that the man couldn't escape from her. Finally, they broke away from the monster. Azathoth asked the hero where they were, and he replied that they were in the Hero Guild in Zone Z, in his house. It was even easier for the demon god. After he regains his strength in his body, he can kill directly from the city. Charlotte will pay for stealing his heart. He immediately snuggled up to the guy and addressed him. In a sweet voice, the girl said that she was cursed by a monster, and if she didn't find a partner soon, she would die. She asked to be saved. Charlotte's nose started bleeding from the sight. He replied that he was a noble and honest hero and would never take advantage of someone's vulnerability. Azathoth knocked Charlotte to the floor, saying that her body was in pain, and the hero had to help her. The guy was still bleeding. He couldn't believe that he would get into such a situation. In the depths of his heart, a warrior always knew that he would never be able to take advantage of someone's weakness. Otherwise, his conscience would torment him. However, he remembered that he was a hero, and his honor said that people who needed help were suffering, and he could not pass by. Charlotte reached out to the girl. He pulled her to him, because he was willing to endure the pain from the depths of his heart. The demon god was going to drain all the energy and restore his strength. He wants to destroy every mortal one by one. The hero opened his mouth. It was red. Suddenly, he felt something near his feet. Charlotte asked if it was a tail, which was impossible for him because there was a man in front of him. However, the hero noticed a strange thing. The tail was both in front and behind. He realized that this was not really a girl. The guy screamed. He abruptly pushed Azathoth away with a shout. Charlotte moved away from the demon god. The poor guy turned pale. At that moment, an animal fell out of his pocket. In shock, he asked why the girl has the same thing that the guy has. Azathoth slammed on the door. She hugged the hero, addressing him as brave. The demon god gently reminded Charlotte of her promise of help. Azathoth stroked the boy's thighs. The monster understood that it was already getting light, and his body was starting to change. He asked the hero if he hadn't changed his mind. The lizard began to glow, and the demon god asked who it was. In an instant, a girl appeared in front of them. She asked her master to feed her, otherwise she would starve to death. The lizard girl needed his help. Charlotte seriously told Azathoth that he was the first to promise to help her. For a lizard, the place it found itself in was small. She had nowhere to turn around. The hero ran out of the room, saying that he would quickly cook something. While he was cooking, he was worried that he wouldn't have time to help Azathoth, because if he didn't, the demon god would die, and that would be a problem for the hero. On the other hand, the guy wasn't thrilled that he would have to get close to such a creature. In frustration and understanding of hopelessness, Charlotte screamed and cried. Azathoth came into the kitchen. He couldn't wait any longer and was going to get his energy back. Otherwise, he will have to act differently. The girl approached the hero. Azathoth decided that he would force him. The demon god hugged Charlotte from behind and started caressing her, causing the hero to scream. He grabbed the frying pan and, pushing the girl away, hurried to the lizard. The guy came out of the kitchen, saying that he had to save Yungir's pet first. Azathoth was speechless. He was annoyed that his body was too weak, so he needed to find a better way. Charlotte went to the lizard, where she was already drinking something from a bottle. He asked her how she had drunk the toilet cleaner. It was delicious for the girl. The lizard was eating. Azathoth approached the guy, saying that it was his turn now. Charlotte tried to calm him down, but the demon god didn't need his pathetic excuses. He grabbed his hands. He needed to regain his power right now. Azathoth pinned the guy against the wall. At that moment, the system notified him that the time to use the weapon had expired, so his clothes disappeared. The demon god's gaze dropped down. The information window gave the hero a task, so that he ran outside, hiding behind a piece of cloth, and waved to 33 people. Charlotte was indignant and said that she would not do it. After his words, the system notified him that if he did not complete the action, he would be exiled to the reverse dimension. There was a huge door behind him. It opened, and there was a crowd of reflected muscular men who were waiting for the hero. It was much more terrifying than the ordeal. Charlotte screamed. It was an injustice. He didn't understand how you could cover yourself with such a small piece of cloth, because the whole back would be open, and if he holds it from both sides, he won't be able to wave to people. The hero was doomed. Leaving the room, a naked Charlotte said that he was going out for a walk and asked to wait for him. Lizard suggested that people walk like this every day. Azathoth thought they would have to wait all day. The Yumge animal offered the demon god a taste of a chemical that tasted good to her, but he refused. Charlotte covered his face with a cloth. At least no one will remember him if he hides his face. He rushed to the barbecue area, because there are always a lot of people there, and this way he can quickly cope with everything. The spider, watching this, wondered where he was rushing to. She immediately sensed that the hero was nearby. Charlotte was waving his arms to get attention. He needed to be looked at. Passers-by started shouting and protesting. Someone was calling for help to sort out the naked guy. The weapon recovery mission was completed on 12 of the 33 viewers. He has 7 minutes left to complete the task. Angry people ran after the bad guy to catch and hand him over to the police. Meanwhile, someone came to the girls. They immediately sensed someone's presence. It was Shatil. She went in through the window and told the demon god that she had finally found him. The girl added that the bravest of the heroes live in this city, and if they are caught, they will have problems, so they should leave this place as soon as possible. But Azathoth said there was no point in hiding, since it was already morning. He ordered her to find Charlotte, and as soon as the sun rises, she must spill her blood on the ground so that the demon god can find her. By that time, he will have returned to his usual form. Shatil went to look for him. She was worried about what would happen to the man when Azathoth returned to his usual form. The answer came to her. Charlotte will become porridge. However, the girl was not happy about it. She landed on the building and watched as the crowd chased the bully, and Charlotte continued to draw attention to herself and wave to passers-by. Because of the closed face, no one could figure out who this criminal was. The weapons recovery mission has already been completed on 24 of the 33. The hero already had half of it. Suddenly, the people who were chasing him were attacked by a huge insect. It was a C-rank saber-toothed spider. Everyone was shouting for the citizens to evacuate immediately. Charlotte stopped. The monsters appeared at the wrong moment. He decided to try to fight while completing the mission. The hero turned to the system, but it did not work due to an unfulfilled mission. The guy didn't expect to hear this. He was asked to complete the test as soon as possible. One of the warriors was fighting with the spiders, while the horns were asking to leave the Z-17 area. The man grabbed an insect by the legs and asked to throw him a weapon to finish off the monster. Charlotte slapped his hand, congratulated him, and said goodbye. He ran away, and the man cursed. He asked if the monsters had already pulled off his pants. While the warrior was distracted, the spider got out and growled. The monster was attacking him. The man tried to defend himself, but he was saved by another hero in armor. The spider was cut in half. It was the captain of the A-rank security service, Kayak. He remarked with disdain that C-ranked warriors were afraid of small spiders. The deputy president of the Heroes Guild, Charlton, praised Kayak for his work. He wanted to leave the battlefield and evacuate as soon as possible. He was reassured and reminded that his security detail was with him. There was a spider behind them. She felt that the person she was looking for was nearby. Kayak immediately pulled out his sword and stood in a defensive stance. He ordered to ensure the safety of the deputy president and prepare for battle. The captain wanted to punch the monster in the face, but it dodged. The spider touched her cheek to the warrior's hand. She began to split. The monster asked if that was all he was capable of. The poison began to spread all over his arm and reached his shoulder. Kayak screamed in unbearable pain. Humans were too fragile for a monster, because they couldn't withstand even a drop of poison. The captain fell down and asked not to be touched. Away. One of the soldiers said he would detain the monster, while the deputy president was taken to a safe place. The spider was excited that someone was so confident that they could detain her. Meanwhile, Charlotte was running around the city, looking for the last person to complete her mission. The poison consumed the entire Kayak. The monster grabbed his head. She liked his sweet moans, but the captain fell silent when she approached him. But the monster wanted to hear more. Charlton was screaming and asking for help. Charlotte stopped the spider when she reached for the deputy president. The hero told the man to look at him. After that, the mission was completed. The clothes instantly returned to the guy. He activated the system, which allowed him to select a card. The weapon was chosen, the silent divine finger. Now touching the surrounding objects, the enemy will also feel the touch. When the enemy screams from the bottom of his heart, then the silent force will come into action. The spider immediately recognized the man. She demanded that he tell her where Azathoth was, but Charlotte wasn't going to give it back. The monster attacked the hero. She declared that she would kill him and find the demon god herself as soon as morning came. The hero gave instructions to block the target. He dodged her powerful paws. The hero used his weapon to stop his fall. At that moment, the opponent felt as if someone was touching her body. She screamed, something touched her, and her scream rate was 12%. The silent force was activated, and an invisible force hit the spider in the ground. The monster was outraged that a man dared to touch her breasts. She noticed that as soon as she screamed, it was as if she had been hit. She was in pain, and it was all because of Charlotte, who was happy with his weapon. Ganena said that her body and mind belonged only to Azathoth, and anyone who touched her except the demon god would have to die. The degree of the scream was directly proportional to the silent power. The spider gathered all her venom in her hands. She's going to bring the man's corpse to the Lord as an apology. She rushed at the hero, intending to destroy him. That was his price for touching her, but Ghana missed and hit the wall. Charlotte dodged. She reached for the guy who was right below her. Charlotte got scared and pressed himself against the wall, touching it along the way. He managed to evade the spider's hands. Ghana groaned. The scream rate was 43%. An invisible force hit the monster. Charlotte felt like he had touched her armpit. The girl put her hands over her mouth. This time, the attack was much stronger than the previous one. The red spider did not understand why she moaned again, because she wanted to restrain herself. For a second, she felt a touch in her armpit. She was tickled. Galena really liked it, which was strange, because only Lord Azathoth could give her such pleasure. She picked up her bell and asked the god of demons for forgiveness. The spider did not understand what was happening to her, and assured her that a man would never be compared to a lord. The girl cursed and slapped her forehead hard. Blood flowed down her face. Now she's come to her senses and deserves to be forgiven. Watching the spider beat herself, Charlotte decided that she was crazy. Ghana said that the hero is attacking strangely. She moaned as she pulled the sword out of her belly. For Charlotte, it was an amazing place to store weapons. But he didn't have time for that. He was wondering about the trajectory of the blows, considering that he had touched her breasts and armpits first. The spider ran at the hero. He realized that the next blow would have to come from the back. However, it was too late for the guy to escape. Gamana was already behind him and swung her sword. She missed and hit the ground. Charlotte said he couldn't reach him because he was very agile. The spider agreed with this and attacked with her web. She immediately stuck to him, hampering his movements. It was very bad for the hero. The cobweb stuck him to the wall. Only Charlotte's head was sticking out of it. Ghana slowly approached him. He won't run away now. The spider pointed her sword at him, saying that it was his time to die. But the guy managed to pull out his hand. He touched the wall, mentally aiming for the inside of his thigh. Ghana felt the touch and moaned, once again convinced that her opponent was fighting very strangely. She covered her mouth with her hands, because she knew she had to restrain herself. Charlotte kept touching her, but the spider was silent. The degree of screaming was 1%. She was able to restrain herself. Red Ganana said that if he didn't scream, his attacks wouldn't work. Looking in the direction of the hero, she saw only a torn web. The spider didn't know how he got out. The guy was standing behind her. Despite her words, he was able to escape. Ghana put her hand over her mouth and said it was stupid. She confessed that she had figured out his tactics, and now he would no longer have a chance to escape. The spider said that Charlotte was going to die. Ghana gagged with cobwebs and promised herself that she would not make a sound. With such protection, the hero's techniques will no longer work. With a smile, Charlotte wanted to ask her if she felt a touch on the inside of her thigh. The spider blushed, mentally cursing the attentive man. The guy realized that he was right about the attacks matching her body proportions. He stated that they were moving on to the part of the fight where one side was taking over the other. Charlotte was ready to explore her body and find the most sensitive spot.
The spider demon realized that she would sense the protagonist's attacks no matter where they were directed. Her main goal was to not make a single sound. The main character quickly ran towards her. The demoness's eyes widened in surprise. Charlotte's attack hit her whole body and brought the spider pleasure. She managed to hold back her moans with the last of her strength. The protagonist looked intently at the spider, noting out loud her lack of reaction. The demoness couldn't come to her senses. She couldn't understand these strange sensations or why they seemed to emanate from her very heart. The girl silently promised herself and her master, Azathoth, that she would hold on no matter what. He was the only one in her heart, and she would never betray him. She pulled her weapon out of the ground. The spider rushed at Charlotte with a weapon, keeping in mind that no pleasure in the world could compare with what her master brought her. The protagonist slid his hands along the walls. He used a new attack on the demoness with a sly look. She stopped, blushing and clutching her head with her hand. The pleasure that washed over her body like a wave clouded her mind. The man, watching the fight from his hiding place, noticed that the monster was trembling again. He blushed, at a loss to understand how the protagonist had made her moan. He too longed to learn such techniques. Meanwhile, the demoness couldn't resist the pleasure spreading through her body. She had never experienced anything like it before. Before her eyes, as if in a haze, the image of her master, Lord Azathoth, appeared. She found the strength to stop thinking about pleasure and get up. The demoness looked resolutely at the protagonist. She realized she needed to rid herself of unnecessary thoughts and remember her loyalty to Lord Azathoth. Charlotte stood there, confused, as the spider made no sound again. He assumed his attacks weren't enough. The monster, meanwhile, modified its weapon with the help of its poison. She rushed into the attack again. Charlotte responded by taking a fighting stance and began using her attacks to attack her opponent again with pleasure-giving techniques. Once again, Charlotte's attacks stopped the demoness. The sudden rush of pleasure prevented her from even moving. The spider realized that she needed to kill the guy quickly. Otherwise, the master would disappear from her heart. She threw her weapon at him. Charlotte didn't expect that. The weapon flew a couple of centimeters from the main character's head. However, the demoness wasn't so simple. She used the technique on the weapon. The guy looked around in surprise, noticing that spider venom began to be released from the weapon in different directions. The entire passage between the houses where the main character stood was covered in poison. The spider approached the passage, looking for Charlotte with her eyes. Now she wasn't afraid to be near the guy, because the poison would simply dissolve his entire body before he could attack her. Suddenly, Charlotte's voice called out to her from somewhere above. He was standing on the rooftops of buildings, shouting at the spider that she couldn't stop him. The demoness could not have expected that he would simply jump onto the roof. The guy looked up at her and said he wouldn't fall for attacks like that again. Now it was his turn to attack. He jumped off the roof. He touched the buildings with his palms and used technology. A new wave of pleasure washed over the demoness's body. She threw her head back in pleasure. Charlotte watched her with a smirk, continuing to use her technique. The spider tried to hold back her moans, telling herself that she needed to endure it a little longer, and the effect of the technique would wear off. Charlotte continued to use the technique. The mask on the demoness's face began to tear. When it was completely torn, a drawn-out groan escaped the spider's mouth. She wanted to eat the little man who had done this to her. A system window appeared in front of the main character, which stated that the scream level was 100%. The bell on the spider's neck broke. Suddenly, a huge beam of light appeared. The beam was aimed at the demoness. Her body began to disintegrate. Meanwhile, system windows popped up, indicating that the spider's magic level was declining. Once the magic level reached 0, the demoness turned into an ordinary saber-toothed spider. The enemy was defeated. The weapon returned to the system. Charlotte looked at the spider in surprise. He walked slowly towards the place where the demoness had been. Charlotte held out his hand and allowed the spider to climb onto his palm. He continued to stare in amazement at the little spider, who now posed no threat. A system window popped up next to him, informing him that Conquest had been unlocked. After defeating the demoness, Charlotte gained her ability to create a poisonous alloy. He could now attach a potent poison to the hilt of a weapon. The protagonist wondered if he could use the poison inside his body as a weapon. His thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the red-haired demon, Azathoth. Blood began to flow from the purple-haired demoness's finger. The demoness with white hair was frightened by the sudden disappearance of her interlocutor. A red portal appeared in front of the purple-haired demoness. From the portal, he inquired about the man's whereabouts. The demoness knelt before the Lord. She admitted that she had lost track of him. The demon's gaze grew stern. He threateningly declared that his heart was within this man, and if it was not returned, he would continue to incarnate as a helpless human being every night. Suddenly his words were interrupted by a loud groan coming from the direction of the city. Some unknown feeling told him he needed to go that way. Azathoth ran in that direction as fast as he could. The demoness looked after him questioningly. At this time, the main character unlocked a new skill, teleporting monsters back to their home. Charlotte teleported the little spider to the demon princess. Lord Azathoth appeared behind the protagonist. Charlotte looked at the demon that appeared out of nowhere in fear. Azathoth, sparing no effort, instantly pinned the guy to the ground. Demona shared that he was irritated by the fact that the main character promised to save him, but in reality just up and ran away. The hero, pinned to the ground by the demon's hand, cried out in surprise at the fact that the demon was a man, and also a monster. The hero accused the demon of lying and of being cursed. He didn't understand what the demon wanted from him. The demon, pinning the hero to the ground, said it only wanted a promise fulfilled. Charlotte flatly refused, as the demon was a man. The demon suggested a change, letting go of the protagonist's head for a moment. He looked around in confusion. Lord Azathoth assumed the form of a cat girl and meowed. He asked if the hero would be interested in his current form. Charlotte disagreed. The boy turned around and attacked the demon in the form of a girl. The protagonist said that no matter who the demon became, he would never be interested in him, because he liked women. Lord Azathoth stopped Charlotte's fist with 2 fingers. He twisted the guy's arm, suggesting that people liked role-playing games. The demon was very saddened that the protagonist refused to play this kind of game with him. Azathoth decided to take extreme measures and pulled Charlotte's palm to his mouth. The protagonist's eyes widened in fear. The boy was shocked when the demon licked his hand. He instantly recoiled, tearing his palm from the demon's grasp. Azathoth bit his finger, saying how delicious and sweet Charlotte was. The demon used a technique on the protagonist that pinned him to the ground, preventing him from escaping. Azathoth lifted his feet off the ground. Taking off into the air, the demon shared with the protagonist that he had long ago raised the system's level to the maximum and would not allow the boy to escape, because, in the end, the result would be the same. The demon considered using the system to reduce Charlotte's speed. Charlotte responded by expressing reluctance to use the system against humans. After all, he was human too. The main character's body rose into the air. Azathoth seized the protagonist and offered him a new, previously unknown form of pleasure. The demon promised to heal the boy with his blood, which served as the antidote, provided he behaved well. Charlotte shouted that she would rather die than do this to get the antidote. The protagonist pulled his hand out of the demon's tenacious grip in disgust. Lord Azathoth, humorously outraged by this refusal, decided to teach the boy a lesson and created a sphere that would make Charlotte beg to do this to him. The demon drove the sphere into the protagonist's body. The sphere began to gradually disappear. The demon looked in confusion at his hand, where the sphere had recently been. He didn't understand what had happened or where his magic had gone. System windows popped up around him. They stated that the system had canceled the demon's attack, and all attacks against Cirrus were useless. Another system window appeared, offering Charlotte the chance to sacrifice 50% of his lifespan to kill Azathoth. The boy screamed his agreement at the top of his lungs. After this, a pop-up window appeared, stating that once Azathoth was captured, the skill Azathoth's Spear of Oblivion would activate. Azathoth would then be completely absorbed by the protagonist, and the poison could be neutralized. Charlotte had 50 days left to live. Azathoth pulled back in surprise. He couldn't understand why the system hadn't returned to his body. That simply couldn't be happening. Charlotte turned around and tried to use the technique as quickly as possible, since it works within 10 meters and it only works if the target is in front of his eyes. The blast wave from the technology engulfed both the demon and the human. Its force caused the surrounding ground to crack. The red smoke that the demon had created was impenetrable. The protagonist was furious. He couldn't understand how the demon had created such a thick fog. At the same time, Lord Azathoth, taking advantage of the opportunity, carefully slashed his palm with his claws and released his green blood. The purple-haired demoness immediately cried out in surprise. Her palm suddenly began to bleed. A drop of blood fell on the grass. Suddenly, a red portal appeared from the ground behind the demoness. A distraught Azoth emerged from the portal, disguised as a giant demoness. He was extremely angry, as the system had betrayed him. Because of it, he nearly died, and the demon began to suspect that the system would reveal his location to the protagonist. Lord Azathoth was right. System windows appeared before Charlotte's face, showing the demon's current location. The protagonist was surprised by how far the demon had run in just a second. The purple-haired demoness called out to Azathoth with concern about his wounds. She noticed that the Lord was sweating profusely. Azathoth told her in a calm voice that no one could hurt him. Since the demoness had drunk his blood, their bodies were now one. If he were wounded, she would suffer first, not he. The demoness asked if Azathoth had taken care of the boy. He regretfully replied that his attacks were ineffective against the protagonist. The Lord noted that the demoness seemed overly happy to learn of the man's resilience. She merely expressed her hatred for him and suggested they return to the dungeon. The demon smiled excitedly and flatly refused to return. He'd been with the system for 1,000 years and knew how it worked. It rendered his attacks useless, except for those that could deliver deadly pleasure. Lord explained that the system's selection of a host with a compatible symbiotic organism is a very complex task, so when a person dies, the system will select only them. They only need to become human, and the system won't know where they are. The Lord addressed the focused demoness, calling her Sadil. He demanded that she find the human again. Lord Azathoth inquired whether Sadil could use the newly learned transformation magic. He ordered it to be tried on him, which Sadil obeyed without question. As Sadil struggled to change the Lord's appearance, he reminded her that he would lose all his magic that night, and would have to rely solely on Sadil to maintain the transformation. The demon assessed his new appearance and said that with this transformation, humans would be unable to recognize him. His plan revolved around the beloved human story of heroes rescuing beautiful women. Sadil worriedly asked if Lord Azathoth could truly kill a person in a, quote, a pleasant way. The demon confidently replied that he could, otherwise he wouldn't have died in his time. Now he's abandoned, even by the system. Azathoth angrily struck the tree. The more he thought about the whole situation, the angrier he became. He was tormented by the idea of why the system had rejected him, and couldn't understand how he was any worse than that man. At that moment, the protagonist focused on the thought that he had only 50 days left to live. He needed to find Azathoth within that time to recover and survive. His heart began to beat faster. Charlotte's eyes widened in fear. The poison in his body had reactivated. The boy looked at his feet in fear. This time, the poison was causing a burning sensation in his legs. The little finger on his foot began to burn. The protagonist fell to the ground, clutching his poisoned leg. He couldn't contain his painful cries. Due to the pain spreading through his leg, the protagonist gradually began to lose consciousness. A man nearby noticed his agony. The protagonist opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was a white ceiling and a surprised doctor. Charlotte sat up in bed. The doctors began to fuss. One of them sent another to Lord Charlton to inform him of the boy's awakening. Lord Charlton, without protest, hastened to carry out the order. The protagonist, confused, asked if he was in the hospital and who had brought him there. The doctor informed him that it was His Lordship Charlton, Vice President of the Adventurers Guild. The door to the ward opened. First, a booted foot appeared. Charlotte looked in surprise at the man who had just entered. He expressed joy that the boy had finally come to his senses. The man smiled and reminded him that the boy had once saved his life. The protagonist remembered that he was the same fat guy who had been cornered by the spider demon. Lord Charlton sat down next to the boy's bed. Charlotte asked how long he had been unconscious. The man replied, "About 13 hours. The boy was surprised at how long he had been unconscious. Apparently, the fighting had left him severely exhausted. The man grimaced menacingly and apologized for his impatience and inattention. He expressed hope he hadn't disturbed the young man's rest. The protagonist immediately asked if the vice president needed anything. Lord Charlton clasped his knees with trembling hands. He noted the exceptional nature of Charlotte's magic. Cold sweat poured down the vice president's face. his voice thick with awkwardness. He said that some of his abilities as a man had faded with age. After witnessing the battle, he wanted to learn Charlotte's techniques to regain his youth. The man jumped up abruptly, knocking over his chair, and bowed. He screamed, begging the protagonist to teach him this magic and accept him as his apprentice. Charlotte looked at him in shock. The protagonist was stunned that the vice president of the Adventurers Guild wanted to become his apprentice. Charlotte thought that if he accepted the man as an apprentice, then thanks to their closeness, he would be able to use the guild's resources to find and capture Azathoth. The guy looked seriously at the vice president, clarifying that his magic was very difficult to learn and whether the man could really accept it. Determined, Lord Charlton shouted out that no matter how difficult it was, he had to try. Charlotte continued to explain seriously that the magic the vice president had witnessed had to be practiced starting from the fingertips. Lord Charlton fell to one knee. He folded his hands in a gesture of supplication and begged the protagonist to accept him as his disciple. Charlotte asked him, as his disciple, to quickly rise from his knees. The man, looking serious, asked that this conversation remain between them, as he was still the vice president of the Adventurers Guild. Charlotte helped him up and agreed to keep everything a secret. The vice president's secretary, Daisy, knocked on the door. She said she had something to report to his lordship. Lord Charlton allowed her in. She showed the arrest warrant for the protagonist, who had been convicted of desertion. Charlotte was sentenced to death. Lord and Charlotte examined the warrant and documents. Daisy explained that the documents contained information about the protagonist disobeying the captain's orders in Cyrus's squad and escaping without permission, leading to the mission's failure. The man offered to find someone to help him deal with it, but Charlotte refused. He said there was no need, as he hadn't run away and had already taken care of everything. Daisy smiled sternly. She said she couldn't believe that he, a low-ranking monster, along with Bella and Tyr, who were slightly higher in rank, had defeated a high-ranking boss monster. The protagonist calmly suggested to the secretary that they send someone to check the dungeon. She said she had already sent someone. But in any case, Charlotte needed to be detained during the investigation to avoid any problems. Lord Charlton confidently declared himself ready to take on the responsibility of supervising the boy. Daisy looked at him worriedly and declared that it was against the rules. Daisy worriedly reminded the Lord of the Guild's gratitude banquet that evening and asked him to reconsider and not bring Charlotte with him. The protagonist, on the contrary, expressed a desire to attend. The man and his secretary left the room, leaving the protagonist alone with his thoughts. Charlotte remembered what he needed to do. While he was alone, he needed to check Lord Azathoth's location. He planned to find him as soon as he felt better. He summoned the system panel. The system showed that the demon had not run out of town, but on the contrary had returned and was very close to the main character. Charlotte's eyes widened in fear. He was overcome with thoughts about why Lord Azathoth had approached him, and if he was in the hospital, then he was definitely in the building nearby. He was enraged by the realization that had occurred to him. Azathoth was now in his house. The protagonist immediately jumped out of bed. He ran without even bothering to put on his shoes. He reached his home in a couple of minutes. He pushed the door open with all his might, furiously scanning the apartment's interior. The guy entered the house, which, it would seem, looked quite ordinary. He quickly began his inspection. The demoness bundle was still in the house. Charlotte peered tensely into the kitchen, but no one was there. He then headed to the restroom, but there was no one there either. Charlotte had no idea what had happened to UJ or where she was. The protagonist's eyes lit up with rage as a realization occurred to him. The mere thought of Yuge being captured infuriated him. Meanwhile, the demoness with white eyes gradually began to come to her senses. Her arms were pinned above her head. Yuge had no idea where she was or what had happened to her. Lord Azathoth, in a new form, sat next to her. The girl smiled slightly and said that they were in a dungeon, from where they would later go to the site of an auction for monsters and humans. A system window popped up with Azathoth's location. Charlotte continued running barefoot across the ruined city, searching for the demon. Azathoth hadn't moved for half an hour, meaning he had a chance to catch him, and he couldn't let it slip away. A clear and starry night arrived. Suddenly, Azathoth's location disappeared from the system window. Charlotte was at a loss to understand what had happened and why the location had disappeared overnight. Suddenly, a weapon whistled right in front of the protagonist's face. A man in armor appeared next to him. Charlotte barely managed to jump aside. The man's weapon slammed with all its force into the wall of the nearest building. The protagonist slowed down and looked tensely at the man who attacked him. The man drew his weapon and assumed a fighting stance. He said that this land was his cavalry's territory, and it didn't matter whether monsters or heroes entered, they would deal with everyone without mercy. Other cavalry members arrived. They suggested that perhaps the main hero was acting as bait and needed to be captured and interrogated. Charlotte thought they might know where Yushin was. It also crossed his mind that the cavalry might know where Lord Azathoth was. Suddenly, a reminder popped up in the system window. It said the weapons recovery mission would begin in 2 minutes. The protagonist was very concerned about this. After accepting the mission, his stats would return to their original state, leaving him with little time to deal with the cavalry. Meanwhile, Yuji was unable to escape the shackles due to the restraining magic that was enchanted around them. Her body, without the male's nourishment, had become too weak to break the spell. The girl asked why the demoness, being a monster, didn't want to return to the dungeon. She replied that, like the lizard Lin Lang, she always relied on the strong essence of men. Besides, human dens were much better than caves, and the food was tastier. Their conversation was interrupted by an unexpected blow that shattered the wall of their prison. Yuge's eyes widened in fear. A man in armor flew into the opposite wall. He was unconscious. Someone appeared at the threshold of the dungeon. This someone turned out to be the protagonist. He was holding the keys to the shackles. The boy looked out of breath and tired. He had to take the keys by force, as the cavalrymen were unwilling to give them up. Yugi called out to him. System windows popped up, stating that the weapon's return timer had been activated. Charlotte had to spank someone 10 times on the buttocks until they made a sound. He had 60 minutes to complete the task. The protagonist ran anxiously toward the previously beaten man. He began shaking him, holding him by his clothes. He needed the man to be able to make sounds, but unfortunately, he was unconscious. Azathoth, in the guise of a girl, suddenly addressed him as a brave hero and begged for salvation. Yuge looked at her neighbor in surprise. Charlotte thought that since they were on the outskirts, monsters could appear at any moment, and that it would be very dangerous without the system's power. First, he needed to complete the task. The protagonist freed Yuge's hands and looked at her intently. He apologized to her before gently slapping her buttock. Yuge let out a breath of surprise and asked what her master was doing. The system window showed information that the task of returning the weapon was 1/10 completed. Charlotte awkwardly explained that in order for them to escape the dungeon safely, he needed to slap her buttocks a few times. He asked her not to resist. Meanwhile, Azathoth in the girl's body smiled slyly and thought that the main character was definitely a bad boy, and with this type of guy, he only needed to flirt a little, and they would fall for it themselves. The girl raised her leg and, with a pitiful expression, turned to the brave hero, asking him to remove her shackles. She said he could use her right now if he saved her. The protagonist freed her legs from the shackles. The girl immediately threw herself into Charlotte's arms, something he hadn't expected at all. She complained to him that she had been kidnapped and brought here by force. She pressed her whole body tightly against the boy. She said she was very afraid, because she had been threatened with being sold to the goblins. She again promised the hero that she would be his if he saved her. The guy raised his hand. Charlotte slapped the girl hard on the buttocks. The protagonist froze, waiting for some reaction. The girl continued to hug him. He frowned and asked warily why she wasn't making a sound. The captive smiled excitedly and, laughing, asked the protagonist to repeat the previous action. The protagonist looked at her tensely. A pop-up system window informed the host that since the target hadn't made a sound, the host would freeze for 5 minutes. Charlotte fell to the ground as the captives watched in horror. Yuge immediately extended her hands to her master. The captive didn't expect such an outburst from Yuge. The demoness, in turn, shared that she was feeling very uneasy and needed essence and blood from the protagonist's body. The demoness continued to say that she could actually fall and die, but the protagonist began to gradually lose consciousness. Having received no response from Charlotte, Yuge decided to take his silence for consent and pressed her lips to his neck. The girl screamed furiously at Yuge, calling her a shameless lizard for daring to take a step while she wasn't looking. The captive demanded that the boy be released. Yuge wrapped her tail around the indignant captive. She hugged Charlotte and objected to the girl, saying that he was her master and she was his first. Azathoth, in the girl's body, looked furiously at the demoness and tried to escape the tenacious grip of the tail. He realized that it was more important for him to get the system back than to argue with the demoness, so he quietly approached the couple. Charlotte turned her gaze to the approaching girl. A slight smile played on her face. She moved closer to the guy's ear and nipped it. She suggested they do it together, which made the protagonist look at her shyly and blush. His ear burned from her touch. Charlotte couldn't understand if this woman was truly being held here against her will, or why she was willingly doing this to him. Sadil had been watching them all this time. She blushed at the sight unfolding before her. She couldn't even begin to guess whether Azathoth really wanted this. She could feel his desire in her body. Azathoth, meanwhile, took the protagonist's hand and pulled it toward his chest. He said he hadn't played like this in a long time. Sadil shuddered as she felt the touch, as if it was she who was touched. She blushed and couldn't help but sigh. Azathoth asked the protagonist to try bending his fingers and applying a little pressure. He held the protagonist's hand, helping him. The touch sent a new wave of pleasure through Sadil's body. Her body began to go numb and goosebumps ran across it. Azathoth, in the woman's body, reached his hand toward Charlotte's pants. The guy saw the excited face of the girl next to him. His eyes widened in surprise. He thought that the woman shouldn't touch him in that very place. Sadil felt as if her hand was grasping something. This kind of touch and grip reminded the protagonist of certain sensations. This realization made him tense. He realized with horror that he had been doing this to Azathoth all this time. His face twisted in disgust. Azathoth noticed the protagonist's changed gaze. He jerked his hand away. Realizing what he had done, the demon realized that he had unknowingly used the same technique as before, causing Charlotte to recognize him. He pulled back in fear and called out to Sadil. The demoness helped her lord escape by using a distraction technique on the collapsing wall. Yuji was frightened by the explosion and began to transform. She turned into a small lizard and ran with all her might to the main character, asking for salvation. Charlotte continued to lie on the ground and heard Sadil helping Azathoth escape. The boy was shocked that Azathoth had taken the form of a woman to reach him. Unfortunately, he still couldn't use his abilities to catch up. Finally, the system freeze ended, and the protagonist was able to get up. He examined the hole in the wall and decided to wait for access to the system to open. Only then did Charlotte decide to go after Azathoth, but now he promised himself to be more careful with anyone who approached him at night. The gates of Zone Z have opened. A crowd of people called out to Charlotte. The guy noticed familiar faces in the crowd. It was Cyrus and the vice president's secretary. He was surprised to see them there. Cyrus approached him and presented an arrest warrant. He ordered Charlotte to come with them. Suddenly, the secretary, wearing heels, jumped up and asked everyone to wait. She shielded Charlotte and reported that Neye's dungeon had been re-examined and found to be empty, which contradicted the charges, and the process of canceling the warrant had already begun. The protagonist watched the situation in surprise. Meanwhile, the secretary continued to say that no one could arrest Charlotte now, as he was scheduled to attend a banquet in honor of the Adventurers Guild later. The man slapped the secretary across the cheek. He shouted that she was lying, as only captains of rank A and above were allowed to attend the banquet. The man declared that he was the president himself, and ordered her to get lost. The president glared at her. He said that if she continued to cause trouble, he would throw her and the protagonist into the interrogation room. Charlotte approached the secretary with the suggestion that she go to the vice president and bring the notice of cancellation. He asked if 20 minutes would be enough, but the secretary replied that 10 would be enough. The protagonist looked tensely at the president's smug face and told the secretary he'd make them apologize to her later. He promised to punish them more severely. Charlotte was led into a gloomy interrogation room. He was handcuffed. A table with various weapons stood nearby. The president angrily asked the protagonist if he remembered how his right arm had been injured. The protagonist remained silent. The man continued his story about how he bravely led his team into battle against the monster, but Charlotte, in order to escape, attacked him from behind, which resulted in the death of most of his team members. The president sacrificed his right arm to save the rest of the team. He screamed furiously, slamming the table, asking whether a coward like Charlotte really deserved to live. The boy replied in a level voice that a coward who runs away when faced with an enemy truly deserves to die like an animal. These words made the president very angry. The man ordered one of the others present to bring him a hammer. The protagonist began to frantically think that 10 minutes had already passed, and the secretary should be here very soon. Unfortunately, he still couldn't use the system, so he would have to endure it. Suddenly, a voice called out to him from his pocket. It was Yu-Gi. She said the captain couldn't harm him because she had absorbed some of his blood essence and restored some of his magical power. Her only condition was that the guy would repay her double upon returning home. Suddenly, a hammer struck the table near the main character's hand. The commander told him to choose one of his fingers, and they would start with that one. If the protagonist didn't choose, the president would. Suddenly, a man burst into the room, shouting that the vice president's secretary had arrived with a notice that the warrant for Cirrus had been canceled. I picked up the notice of cancellation of the order, and those present could not understand why this had happened. Everyone present looked at each other in fear. They realized the woman really was the vice president's secretary, and the vice president knew Cirrus. But the captain refused to believe it. One of his subordinates asked if they should now release the protagonist. The captain replied that torture after receiving notice of a revocation of the warrant was prohibited. So the captain ordered the notice brought to him in half an hour. He handed it to his subordinates with an inscrutable expression. The man said he hadn't yet received the recall notice and had never heard of it. The main character looked angrily at the man. The captain, his eyes red with rage, declared that he must pay for all his sins today. Meanwhile, outside the door, the secretary was sorting things out with a subordinate, who told her that the captain had not yet received notification of the order's cancellation. The captain struck the protagonist's hand with his hammer with all his might. Charlotte just looked at her hand, unperturbed. The arm remained intact thanks to Yuge's magic. The captain was at a loss. He couldn't understand why there were no broken bones, no blood, not even a scratch on the skin. While the secretary and her subordinates were sorting things out, Lord Charlton approached them. The subordinate and the secretary turned towards the source of the sound. They started to knock on the door with all their might. The vice president managed to open it and found himself inside. The captain looked at him with a confused expression. He asked why the vice president was there. The angry man showed a notice of cancellation of the arrest warrant for Cirrus and ordered his release. The captain immediately dropped the hammer and, with a frightened look, carried out the vice president's order. Finally, the mechanism that had been holding the protagonist's hands all this time opened. The vice president began to reprimand the captain for abuse of power and torture. He said that if this matter were investigated, he would at least be stripped of his license and rank as captain. The captain, looking frightened, said that he had not received the notification and his comrades could confirm this since they had been with him the whole time. He asked someone to confirm this fact, but everyone remained silent and looked away. Everyone was thinking about not wanting to offend the vice president. Lord Charlton continued to glare at the captain as he remained in his helpless state. Help came from an unexpected source. Charlotte said he could testify that the captain had not seen the notice of the warrant's revocation earlier. The protagonist said that he would not continue the case about his arrest if the captain apologized and bowed to the secretary for the earlier blow. The secretary looked at the guy in surprise. All the subordinates, led by the captain, bowed and asked for forgiveness. The protagonist remembered that he had an uncompleted task from the system. He raised his hand with a stick and said that all of them, namely the captain and his subordinates, had treated such a beautiful secretary very rudely. This, in his opinion, was terribly disrespectful. The secretary watched with a confused expression as the protagonist carried out the system's task. His subordinates and the captain couldn't contain their exclamations. A soft smile lit up the woman's face. Apologies and promises that no one would behave like that again were heard everywhere. The protagonist finally let go of the stick and addressed the captain personally. He took the man by the good hand and offered to resolve their issue. The captain hesitantly said that Charlotte had promised not to pursue the matter of his arrest. The boy's eyes glowed red with rage. He replied that he was asking to continue the question about being hit on the arm. He squeezed the captain's healthy hand harder, to which the captain began to apologize and scream in pain. His face contorted with pain. He continued to ask for forgiveness. Charlotte responded by breaking the captain's arm. The bone shattered into pieces. The captain screamed in pain. The man fell to the floor with a broken arm, and his subordinates frantically surrounded him. The protagonist, with an unperturbed expression, said he forgave him. Lord Charlton said Daisy would escort him to the banquet now. He would first need to meet with the envoy from the Holy Territory, after which he would come for them. The main character asked again what kind of territory this was. The vice president explained that they founded the church with the mission to eradicate all evil thoughts from the world. They possess unrivaled cleansing magic and are able to remove any toxins from the body. The scene took place at a gratitude banquet. The vice president was accompanied by a lady. There were many people around. The surrounding people openly discussed the outfit of the saint from the Holy Throne. The men liked her appearance, but they continued to discuss whether it was too inappropriate for a saint to dress like that. The saint stopped on her heels. She turned her head towards the men discussing her. They looked away, embarrassed. The saint said their doctrine was to eradicate all evil thoughts from the world. And to eradicate these thoughts, they must fully understand them, which is why the people in their holy Kerasi dressed this way. She ordered them not to look at her. Lord Charlton called them vile and ordered them to be flogged 10 times by the guards. The men begged for mercy, saying they had not meant to offend the saint. The saint stopped the Lord, saying that it was not necessary. She looked at all the men present and said that if he punished these two, then all the others present would have to be punished as well. However, in her opinion, everyone except the vice president needed to be punished, as his mind was in turmoil, but his body was barely reacting. Unlike the others, who were experiencing a surge of evil thoughts, the Lord scratched his head sheepishly and said he was a man of pure heart, so he had self-control. Those around him began to speculate that the vice president was impotent. A woman stopped in front of the banquet hall. The protagonist appeared next to the secretary. He invited her to the banquet venue. He asked the secretary if the magic of cleansing the Holy Throne was strong. You told him it was their unique magic. She said they could heal everything from lost limbs, illnesses, and even severe poisoning. Being a hero is a risky profession, so hero guilds from all regions wanted to collaborate with them, but they were all rejected. The thing is, they don't want to easily use magic on others. Their main reason for refusing is evil thoughts. The protagonist looked at his hand. He assumed they might be able to rid him of the poison and that he should try to win their favor. Daisy presented her pass, and the identity check was confirmed. The concierge showed them where to go. When the protagonist and secretary entered the banquet hall, they saw a crowd gathered around some strange tent. The vice president approached them and explained that the saint was testing their competence to collaborate. If someone passed the test, collaboration would be possible. Meanwhile, the saint explained that this was the treasure of their holy throne, namely the veil of the Sacred Heart. She noted that once someone was inside, the level of evil thoughts in his heart would be revealed by the gem. With a slight smile, the saint said that possible cooperation with their holy see depended on the purity of hearts of those present. She said that none of the hero guilds in other regions had undergone this. Those present tried to understand how this mechanism would work. The saint said that if they wanted to find out, they should try to go inside. Logan, one of the captains, stepped forward, willing to try. He said he had a pure heart and had never done anything shameful. The saint smiled as the log entered the tent. The captain expected to see anything, but what he saw shocked him. He never expected to see the fruit of his fantasies. In front of him was a Catwoman in a revealing outfit. He instantly blushed and thought to himself how magnificent she was. The Catwoman approached him. Logan didn't expect her to take the initiative and approach him first. He blushed even more. The Catwoman meowed, causing the captain's nose to bleed. His gaze wandered wildly over her body, continuing to tell her how magnificent she was. He begged her to let him stroke her. The Catwoman asked him what exactly he wanted to pet, but she continued to meow. Logan's expression grew even more frantic. He said he wanted to touch a certain wonderful spot. The girl poked him with her finger and asked him to stop. She looked at him sternly and said that this was all disgusting. With one flick of her fingers, she pushed him out of the tent. Logan flew out of there at an incredible speed. He fell to the floor, hitting his chin. His evil thoughts level was 88%. He was definitely a man with a dirty heart. One of those present said that since the captain had an 88% level of evil thoughts, it must be very dangerous inside. Another captain named Owen boldly stepped forward and said he'd go and check. He didn't care what was inside. He could handle it anyway. A few moments later, he flew out of the tent, just like Logan. Everyone present immediately surrounded the captain. They asked if he was all right, but he couldn't give any coherent answers. The captain's evil thought level showed 92%. Others present also wanted to test their evil thought levels. The saint looked with disappointment at the high rate of evil thoughts. She thought she was wasting her time, as there wasn't a single person here whose evil thoughts accounted for even 80%. Everyone here was filthy inside, and no one would be able to pass the test. Another man stepped forward. It turned out to be the main character. He said it was his turn to try. The saint noted that he was the last. The main character froze in surprise. He also saw the Catwoman. She quickly approached him. With a languid look, she asked if he wanted her. The protagonist grabbed her face with his hand. The Catwoman was completely surprised. The guy pushed her away from him and she fell. Charlotte said with a serious expression that there was another woman actively approaching him. He thought he needed to be more careful, as there was a possibility it was Azathoth again. The Catwoman was very surprised. After all, this was the first man who had rejected her so actively. The saint outside couldn't believe her eyes. For the first time, she saw 0% of the content of evil thoughts. She didn't believe anyone could actually achieve this. The protagonist chose to be cautious before confirming her identity. The system activated. The protagonist saw a system window that announced the system had activated. He continued to stare at the Catwoman. A new system window appeared, asking if Charlotte wanted to lock down the enemy. The boy frowned. He thought about how he only had one chance, and if he messed up, he would be doomed when he met Azathoth. Meanwhile, the Catwoman was thinking about how she'd been rejected and, worse, pushed away by a man for the first time. She looked at the guy, dumbfounded. At the same time, the main character continued to stare intently at the girl's body. The Catwoman, however, didn't see any lust in his gaze. She thought he seemed a little hostile toward her. At that moment, the protagonist thought he should pay more attention to the girl's movements, but he was distracted by her large breasts. The girl bit her finger in nervousness. The guy's hostility irritated her even more than the attention of those guys who coveted her body. She considered this a humiliation of her beauty and adopted the most seductive pose she knew in order to seduce the guy. The Catwoman slowly approached Charlotte, motivated by the desire to find a way to make his heart beat faster. The protagonist, however, was concerned that he needed to find a way to test her for any masculine traits. The girl told him not to look at her with such hostility and, arms outstretched, ran toward the protagonist. She believed that a warm, tender embrace would help them connect. The main character looked at the approaching girl with fear. The Catwoman, thinking she'd caught the guy, hugged nothing but air. She was very surprised, as just a moment ago the guy had been there. She couldn't believe her eyes when the guy backed away and rejected her again. The girl jerked towards him again. She put on her friendliest expression and asked the guy not to be shy. The protagonist wasn't expecting such force. The Catwoman continued to move, wanting the young man to feel her tenderness, and for his heart to certainly flutter. The main character, looking at the girl from below, thought that the view just allows him to see if there is something of a man in her. Charlotte used one of his techniques. The girl who jumped on him was under the influence, but in front of the main character's eyes were her breasts, which constantly distracted him, causing him to blush. The only thoughts in the guy's head were that he just needed to move his eyes a little, and he would be able to see everything. The Catwoman couldn't understand why the guy was dodging, but continued to stare intently at her chest, and with such burning eyes. The protagonist dodged again. He avoided her embrace again. The main character swore. His nose started bleeding, and he turned even redder. He said he could look away from the girl because she was gorgeous. The girl turned to him. She asked him why he was acting like this. He was clearly staring at her breasts, like everyone else, and his body was reacting to her too. But she couldn't understand why there wasn't a trace of malice in his heart. She was overcome with hysterics. The Catwoman waited for the young man's answer. He answered without a twinge of conscience that the whole point was that he was an honest man. Charlotte said that he did not have any dirty thoughts about her body, which surprised the girl so much that she opened her eyes in surprise. The protagonist continued to say that when people are born into this world, it is the breast that provides them with milk and nutrients, allowing them to grow strong and survive. That's why he looked at her chest with a heart full of gratitude, not malice. The Catwoman was shocked by these words and blushed. She realized that a blinding light was emanating from this man. The Catwoman realized that the main character was just such a person. The girl felt insignificant compared to this guy. She realized there was a huge gap between them. She bowed her head and said that the main character had passed the test and now he could leave. Charlotte looked at her indifferently, and finally realized that if she was letting him leave so easily, then she was definitely not Lord Azathoth. He said goodbye to her familiarly and expressed his intention to go into detox. The protagonist left the tent. When Charlotte walked out of the tent, the crystal above his head showed 0% dirty thoughts. Meanwhile, the Catwoman blushed and sadly said that perhaps her training wasn't enough. She admitted defeat. Everyone present discussed how it's impossible for the level of evil thoughts to be 0. It's impossible for a man to be indifferent to a Catwoman. Someone suggested that perhaps the crystal had broken. The Saint turned to Charlotte and said she had never before seen a person with an absolutely pure heart. The protagonist asked her to perform purification magic on him to remove the poison from his body. The Saint agreed. She ordered everyone else to leave the room. When everyone left, they were finally left alone. The Saint said that she would now begin detoxification and order the protagonist to lie at her feet. Charlotte lay on his back next to her legs and asked if he needed to do anything else. She simply asked him not to move. She began to explain that their purification magic was bestowed upon them by their holy species. That's why each person has a specific part of their body that creates magic. The Saint took off her heels. She said her cleansing magic is in her feet. That's why she uses her feet to perform magic. The Saint said that while she was using purification magic, the protagonist should not harbor any evil thoughts. Otherwise, her magic would gradually lose its effect. Charlotte clarified whether these evil thoughts concerned him exclusively. The woman replied that yes, since the moment she became a saint of the Holy See, her desires disappeared. She asked the guy to relax completely. She warned him that she would move from top to bottom, as this was necessary for her to assess his physical condition. All this is necessary so that she can more accurately heal his body. The Saint pressed her foot on his hand, which was struck by the curse. She touched his toes with her foot. Then she moved to the other side of his palm. The protagonist thought that she wanted to use her leg to move his hand and tried to turn it over himself. The Saint stopped him in a sharp voice and said that she would do everything herself, otherwise it could affect her ability to cast spells. The chair she brought seemed too small for her, so she asked permission to use the guy's face as a prop. Charlotte couldn't refuse her. The Saint silently looked at the boy's body. She raised her leg over his palm again. The woman said she was starting treatment. She pressed down on the guy's palm with all her strength. At the same time, the Saint pressed on his face, which made the boy feel a little uncomfortable. As soon as Charlotte opened his eyes again, he found himself completely naked in the water. The guy started looking around and wondering where he was and why there was water all around. Suddenly, the huge foot of the Saint began to approach him. He didn't expect it. Splashes started flying all around. The main character winced at how heavy his leg was. He screamed, pushing her away from him with a displeased look. The girl's leg came off his palm. The Saint asked the boy to relax and not fight her leg, as this was part of the healing process. She revealed that she was using her purification magic to project his consciousness into parts of his body. The woman promised to pull him out of the water and that his fingers would be fine. The huge foot was approaching him again. The protagonist grabbed his fingers. Something strange began to reach out from under the water toward him. The Saint said she would pull him out in one fell swoop. Charlotte shared with her that something underwater was entangling him. The woman said that it was poison that was in his body. The so-called poison increasingly entangled the protagonist's legs. The Saint urged the guy to grab her leg to get out. The protagonist followed her advice. He realized he needed to rip her tights to get a better grip. He tried to do it with his teeth. The Saint called his actions very rude. Finally, the guy was able to grab her finger properly. The Saint's foot tried to help the boy escape from the shackles of the curse. The Saint looked at the young man's body once again. The protagonist thought that despite the fact that she was holding him quite tightly, he did not feel any pain, but rather, on the contrary, he felt very comfortable. His finger felt warm. Eventually, the boy was able to escape from the shackles of the poison. His finger was restored and the Saint removed her foot. Charlotte looked at his hand with disbelief. He said with admiration that the magic worked. Nevertheless, the Saint said she felt as if some of the poison still lingered in the protagonist's body. She ordered the boy to remove his shoe. She healed his leg using exactly the same method. Standing up, she looked at the boy and said that his limbs had been restored. Charlotte thought that the cleansing magic was truly amazing. The Saint sat down again on the small bench. She announced that she now needed to change direction. The woman revealed that she had located the poison in his body. They must work together to remove it from his system. Charlotte looked up at her in surprise. The saint ordered him to lie still and remain motionless. She raised her leg over his body again. The protagonist couldn't help but gasp in surprise. He couldn't believe the source of the poison was right there. The saint said she would send him down because he needed to bring the poison to the surface, and then it would disappear. His body would be cleansed once he did. The young man was scared because he could not breathe underwater. The saint asked him not to worry or panic. She supported him with her legs again, promising that he would be fine in this state. The woman said she would help him expel the poison by continually strengthening the protagonist's strength. The main character began to grow. Finally, he saw the poison pool underwater. He checked to see if it was indeed poison in his body. The saint didn't answer, but the hero understood everything anyway. He resolutely headed toward the source of the poison. Meanwhile, the woman felt something strange in her body. The shackles of poison enveloped the body of the main character. The guy screamed to be pushed away from them. The saint explained that this water symbolized his physical state. While he was underwater, she needed to use second-tier purification magic to create a shield around him. She asked Charlotte to break through the poison, as it might interfere with his own magic. He asked her to hurry. The woman announced that she was starting while the protagonist was struggling with the poison that had enveloped him. A system window appeared, informing her that the target was locked. The saint felt a strange sensation in her body. Her favor level was at 1%. Charlotte noticed that the poisons were torn apart. He breathed a sigh of relief when a yellow shield formed around him. The saint announced that the shield was in place and asked him to swim down and try to deal with the source of the poison. The protagonist was ready. The poison couldn't penetrate the shield. The protagonist descended lower and lower. He noticed that the shield was penetrating the poison, and thus he would most likely be able to get closer to the source. Supported by magic, the holy protagonist enthusiastically headed towards the source. Nevertheless, doubts assailed him. He couldn't understand why he still hadn't gotten any closer after swimming such a long distance. The woman explained to him that he couldn't use real distances to judge distances in his bodily consciousness. She explained that something might seem close, but actually be far away. Meanwhile, the saint was thinking about how exhausting it would be to constantly maintain a shield around the protagonist, as she would have to constantly rub his body. But at the same time, she felt an unfamiliar sense of joy spreading from her feet. Her favorability level increased by 21%. The protagonist noticed that the shield began to crack. The next moment, the shield broke. Charlotte screamed like a saint that something was wrong, and his shield cracked. The boy was very worried about this. The woman noticed with surprise that her purification magic was weakening. Her favor level dropped to 47%. The saint realized that impure thoughts were appearing. She turned to Charlotte and told him that if he wanted to get rid of the poison, he needed to stop thinking dirty thoughts about her. Otherwise, the cleansing magic would stop working. The shield cracked under the onslaught of poison. Now the protagonist was left defenseless, and the venom's bonds once again gripped him. He began to choke. The saint thought that she needed to rub the guy harder to quickly restore the shield. She was confident that her purification magic would not fail. The saint's face flushed with a pleasure she had never known before. Her favor level was 69%. The main character continued to choke. The guy woke up already in the hall. He looked up at the saint. Charlotte addressed her. He heard him because she was still thinking about the need to restore the shield. Her favorability level was now at 87%. Women thought that when they stepped on a guy, they felt an inexplicable pleasure and wanted to keep stepping on him. Their approval rating increased to 91%. Charlotte called out to the saint several more times until she finally paid attention to him. She didn't notice how he had already returned to reality. The guy said the treatment had failed and he was confused. The saint was lost in her thoughts again. She couldn't understand what had happened to her or why her heart was now beating so fast. It was a long-forgotten yet familiar feeling. The woman assumed it was something akin to impure thoughts. It was precisely because of her impure thoughts that the cleansing magic had failed. She mustn't tell anyone about this, for it concerned the dignity of the Holy See. She had to leave. The woman declared the treatment complete. Charlotte wondered if she, too, couldn't remove the poison from his body. The saint replied that, of course, there was no poison the Holy See couldn't cure. He simply needed prolonged treatment. She picked up her shoes and said that as soon as she found a way to reach the source of the poisons, she would let him know. But she could still heal the limbs of his body. The saint said the protagonist could visit the holy altar at any time to find her. She introduced herself as Lilia. After that, she quickly turned around and said goodbye to the guy for today. The woman left the room, leaving the guy completely confused about what had just happened. Charlotte thought that in order to get rid of the poison, it was indeed necessary to find Azathoth. Lily pressed herself against the wall, dropping her shoes. She cringed. Her mind was racing with thoughts that she could barely contain herself. It was strange to her that her desire had vanished, but why did she still feel it? Her current desire was different from what it was before. Meanwhile, the captain who was torturing the main character was kicked. His brother yelled at him, saying that he couldn't handle even such a small thing. The captain said the vice president was there this time, which is why the plan failed. His brother said he didn't want to hear anything from him. He threw the folder he had been holding in his hands all this time at his feet. The man explained to the captain that this was a map of the A-rank dungeon Shia, and that he was now leading the team. The captain countered that the boss, Shia, was sulfur monosulfate A-rank. He was only A-rank, and that would be tantamount to sending him to certain death. His brother told him that the Shia dungeon had almost been conquered by the heroes of District K. According to information from the returning heroes, the boss there was seriously wounded, and now even the lowest-ranking heroes could defeat it. Few knew about this. Hearing this, the captain enthusiastically promised that this time he would definitely succeed. At the same time, the dungeon boss Shia was drinking the blood of Azathoth. Azathoth, now in female form, said that after the monster drank so much of his blood, his body should have recovered. The demon took his last sip. He stood up. The demon screamed, struggling to fully revive himself. Azathoth and Sadil watched this outburst of emotion. The monster exhaled. He approached Lord Azathoth, saying he'd saved him again. He asked if there was anything he could do to repay him, as he didn't want to be in his debt. The Lord smiled slyly and said that everything was simple because the monster just needed to kill one person. Meanwhile, Charlotte, thanks to the system, was able to see the Lord's location. He was surprised at how far away he was.